Hello, everyone, and welcome to our BI Livecast series. My name is Maddie Canny. I'm one of the content and community leads here at Brand Innovators. I'm so excited to be kicking off this program today. We have customer engagement happening, and this is a very special program with a lot of amazing speakers coming to us from Lego, Bainfield Pet Hospital, the Washington Post, John Hancock, and Waldorf, Astoria. We'd like to thank all of our marketers for joining us today and taking the time out of their day to speak on this topic, as well as our sponsors for taking the time for putting this on as well. And then, of course, our audience for taking the time out of your day to join us. Just a reminder, we are live. There's a Q&A widget at the bottom of your screen, so that can be used to ask questions. There should be time for that at the end of each session. There also is a chat function, so if you'd like to discuss any of the topics during these fireside chats, there's the option to do that. It's just between the audience, so feel free to do that in real time. And with that said, would like to welcome our first group of speakers. We've got Kate Ardini, who's the CMO of John Hancock, joining us today with our moderator, Rachel Tuffney, who's EVP of Dionomy USA. Welcome, ladies. Looking forward to this.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Maddie. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Great to see you, Kate.
Yes, good to see you as well. I think last time we connected was on a snowy Friday, so this is much nicer.
Yes, and I think we were actually talking about how we're just going to eat junk food the entire weekend, but we shouldn't maybe say that out loud.
Yeah, well, I delivered on my promise there.
Me too. So Kate, why don't we just jump straight in? I love a good lightning round just to get to know you a little bit better. So jumping right in, hometown.
So I grew up in Andover, Massachusetts. It's a small town about 30 minutes north of Boston. Went to school in New York, went to New York University, spent some time in New York City for a few years, as every young, optimistic person should. And then I ran away a few years later, and I'm back in Boston now, which is great.
Love it. Love Boston. First job.
So my first official job where I got a paycheck, right, to declare my income to the IRS was scooping ice cream at Ben & Jerry's. So I did that, spent my summers in Maine when we grew up and worked in Kennebunkport at a Ben & Jerry's serving ice cream. So talk about delighting customers and engaging customers. Like no one's in a bad mood when they're getting ice cream.
Never.
And, people always say like, what's your lifelong dream? And my colleagues, anyone that's listening will know this, it's to open my own ice cream store. So one day.
I will be there. For
awesome.
That. Places that you'd most want to travel to.
Ooh, well, like everyone on this call, I've planned and canceled many trips during the past couple of years. I'm actually on Friday going to Hawaii, which I'm super excited about.
Nice. Oh,
yes,
so
to celebrate a family member's 80th birthday. So we're really excited. So that's what I'm most looking forward to, because it's like in that perfect moment of like, just have to get through 3 more days and then I'll be on a plane and drinking a Mai Tai. So I'm quite excited.
Good for you. And very last, what are you currently watching?
Ooh, so the past couple of weekends, I've watched quite a bit of football, actually. The games have been awesome. I'm sure we have many football fans here. I typically am watching for the games and also the commercials, and they've both been really great. But it's been a fun time to be a football fan, even if the Patriots aren't delivering what we hoped they would. But
we'll move on quickly from that.
Fun Super Bowl coming up for sure.
Absolutely. So I think a really good place to start would just to be a little bit to understand your career journey to date, other than the ice cream scooping. So if you could just kind of give us a little bit of a sort of overview as to where you've worked prior to John Hancock, that would be great.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I was fortunate to go to New York University. So a great place to kind of start my career, because I was able to do lots of internships while I was there, right? There's no better place to be than New York City if you're interested in a career in marketing or communications or advertising. So I got to try quite a few things there, and actually started my career at a small broker-dealer in New York. And so it was a really great place to start out, because it was a small 300-person company, kind of got to do a little bit of everything, which was awesome, because you learned kind of like what you liked doing, but also like well, you really didn't want to do. So, and it wasn't necessarily the big brand or the shiny company, but definitely an awesome learning opportunity, and met some of my dear friends to this day there, which was great. From there, I moved on to Deloitte. So completely opposite, right? Huge, giant global company. So many people, so many roles, in a good way, and just like so much more structure. And that was, I say, like probably the best place that I could have grown up as a marketer. You were just surrounded by amazing thinkers, and there was a great kind of career journey and path and coaching and development plans. And when I was at Deloitte, spent a lot of time working on our digital platforms. So things like delivering webcast series before we were doing this on a regular basis, right? Like that was actually kind of innovative and fun at the time, figuring out our podcast series, bringing that to life, talking about client stories and how we deliver those via digital video. So really great opportunity, great way to tell client stories and really think about opportunities, how you engage clients on a regular basis. About 10 years ago, I moved to John Hancock, started off in a brand role, which arguably is probably one of the most fun jobs to have at the company, especially when you're talking about a 160-year-old, highly trusted, high awareness brand. So did some great work there, have teamed with some really great people through the years. And then I took on the CMO role about a year ago. So it's been fun. And once again, surrounded by a really, really great team. We have awesome leaders, and we're doing some great work that I'm excited to tell you about today.
Fantastic. So I think a really great place to start would be for you to tell us about John Hancock. What do you do?
Sure. So that's a great question, because I mentioned there's a lot of awareness about John Hancock, but then if you ask someone what we did, like some people are like, oh, don't you guys sell life insurance? Oh, are you my retirement plan provider? I think I have a 529 with you for my kids. And like the answer is yes to all of those questions. So John Hancock actually has 10 million customers throughout the US, and we help customers with a variety of their financial needs. So we help you protect your wealth, and that's through things like our life insurance products. We also, through the years, had offered annuities and long-term care as well. So some of those customers are still our existing customers, even if we're not selling those things today. And then on the wealth side of the house, we help you grow your wealth, and that's through our retirement products, through things like our mutual funds, our ETFs, 529s for college savings. So kind of, think of us as someone that can help you grow your wealth or protect your wealth when you think of John Hancock.
Amazing. And is this part of a larger group, John Hancock?
Yes. So John Hancock, we operate as that brand in the US, but we're actually owned, in 2004, we were acquired by a company called Manulife. And Manulife is based in Toronto, much like John Hancock, right? Long-standing brand. John Hancock, I mentioned, is 160 years old. Manulife has a similar tenure in market. And the good news is, while we have two different brands, so we operate as John Hancock in the US, Manulife in Canada, throughout Asia and a few other markets, there's a lot more similar about us than different. So most important, and the thing I think people should keep in mind for today's conversation, is we have a shared mission, which is decisions made easier, lives made better. And while we don't necessarily go out to the external market saying like, this is our mission, everything we do day in and day out for our customers, for our communities, for our employees should align to that mission. And it's a really good kind of guiding North Star. And I hope you see, as I talk through some examples today, how that really is infiltrated into all of our day-to-day work for our customers. The other thing we share is this bold ambition, which is really to be that most digital, customer-centric company in our industry. And so that's like a big, lofty statement,
that's
right?
A really big one.
Once again, it pushes us every day to really think about how we can get better and how we can put the customer and the voice of the customer at the center of everything we do. So it's an amazing, consistent kind of thread that weaves through our organization, and everyone understands it, everyone believes in it, and that guides our decisions day to day. Lastly, we share the same corporate values. And at a lot of companies, you're like, oh, corporate values, those are just on a wall. Like the good news about Manulife and John Hancock is that we live those values every single day. So things like get it done together, think big, sharing your humanity, doing the right thing, that you are expected as a John Hancock employee or a Manulife employee to demonstrate those values on a day-to-day basis. So it's not just what we do, but it's how we do it day in and day out that really leads this high-performing team that I'm fortunate to work with on a daily basis.
That's amazing. So what products are you selling? Because again, this is pretty big in terms of everything that you have to offer.
Yes, we have quite a bit to offer. And my role specifically is focused on our US segment business, which is really that life insurance business that I talked about before. So life insurance, I'm sure many of the people on the call have bought it. Essentially, you purchase life insurance so that if something was to happen to you and you were no longer here, your family or your loved ones or anyone else that is important to you would be taken care of. So at John Hancock, really, like, we make that promise to customers. And as you buy a product with us, and at the end of the day, we have to deliver on that promise. So we have to be there for you when your family needs us, right? And so even if you're not here, we have to deliver on that promise day in and day out. So my role is really focused on our life insurance business, obviously growing and protecting our brand, engaging customers, and really telling our story in new and innovative ways.
Got it. So are you a D2C brand?
So we are not. So we have, through the years, we've definitely kind of dabbled in D2C, and we decided that we should keep doing what we do best, which is selling life insurance through intermediaries. At John Hancock, we call those people producers. You might know them as agents, advisors, but it's essentially someone that you would go to if you had a need for life insurance for your family. You would go to one of these people, you'd say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. This is the type of coverage I want. There's different types of life insurance you can buy depending on your need and your financial situation and all that good stuff. But this producer will really help you find the right solution for you. And so while today we want to talk mainly about consumer engagement, like, our first touch point is with that producer. So we have to deliver that amazing experience for these producers so that they will continue to work with us, continue to recommend us to customers. So equally important to that end consumer engagement is really that producer engagement. They ultimately are our best brand advocates, and they really have to believe in us. And those relationships that we foster with them are hugely important to our business. So we very much value that part of our consumer ecosystem.
That's amazing. So if I get this right, then, so basically you're selling via intermediaries and partners, but you're still actually marketing to the end consumer.
Exactly. So think of us as kind of a B2B2C brand, right? So at the end of the day, a producer recommends us, but an end consumer has to feel really good about the brand, right? Yeah. And they have to trust us. Yeah. I mentioned earlier, we're a highly trusted brand, and I'd argue in something like financial services, specifically life insurance, like, you really have to trust your carrier. Yeah. So kind of having those customers aware of us and understanding what sets us apart and how we can add value to their lives, not just kind of in that moment where there's a beneficiary situation, but kind of day to day. Like, that's our ultimate challenge, is how do we make life insurance relevant to someone's everyday?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So then, can you describe the consumer for John Hancock? Who is it? Who is it you're targeting?
Yeah. So, we have 10 million customers. So there's certainly quite a variety in terms of the people and the end consumer. Yeah. We do have those consumers, as I mentioned before, that have bought products with us years and years ago. And we still have that ultimate responsibility to deliver on the promises we made to them. So that's a very important part of our kind of consumer or end customer pool, and they matter quite a bit. And then at the end of the day, we have these new customers that are buying life insurance from us. Some of them are younger, some of them are older. You really see quite a variety in terms of kind of life stage, income, things like that, in terms of that customer base. And then as we kind of leave the life insurance business, you have to remember as well that our wealth business is also kind of driven by that intermediary or advisor market as well. But things like our retirement programs, right? An organization would choose to partner with John Hancock to provide retirement assistance. And so those customers are, quite a variety of people as well. So the good news is we have quite a diverse customer base, and that allows us to kind of customize programs and opportunities based on those people.
Amazing. So you really are defining product line with different profiles, because different ages, different incomes, etc., depending on products associated with who you're trying to be in front of. So
exactly. I mentioned there's all different types of life insurance. And at the end of the day, that's the role of the producer, right? Is to really help an end customer understand what's right for them. And then John Hancock can provide that. So that's why that partnership is so important to us.
Amazing. So I would imagine that you have got a lot of data, especially with so many clients, but what can you use any of that data? How do you go about thinking from a marketing perspective to put value in front of these clients?
Right. So, I mean, it's a great question. And it's a question as marketers, we're all asked on a daily basis, right? Like
Yeah.
it's amazing to work at a time where so much data is available, but it's also a huge responsibility for a brand and for me as a leader, right? And leveraging that data in the right way, in the way that's right for our customers. And so, I talked about our mission of decisions made easier, lives made better. And a lot of those decisions are data-based decisions. So it's certainly important in driving our business forward. It's a powerful tool to help us meet that mission. So we can't lose sight of that. But more importantly, is like we are so steadfast in how we try to protect that data. And we, once again, make that commitment to our customers, and they have to trust us that that data is only used in ways that they're aware of. It's only used for, certain programs that they've agreed to. It's all voluntary. And so really maintaining that trust and kind of that shared value model of data is hugely important. And I know it's a challenge that every marketer is facing today, but never sharing that data with third parties as well is part of our data governance.
Absolutely. And I think, especially life insurance, it is such an interesting, it's something that I never even thought about until probably fairly recently. So, it must be quite challenging because you're kind of questioning your own mortality. And that isn't the most, that's quite to actually market this value is quite a challenge. So how do you think about this? How do you go to market with this type of what is the messaging? Because I know that you've created some very interesting partnerships. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about that.
Sure, absolutely. So you're right. Life insurance, it's an interesting thing to buy because you'll never really benefit from it, right? You're buying it for your family or for another beneficiary. So, and it also, when you hear about life insurance, kind of the first thing that comes to mind lots of times is dying. And that's not necessarily the thing you want to be associated with as a brand. So it's an interesting proposition, right? It's a great responsibility. You're doing right by your family. You should really always feel good about buying life insurance. But what we've done at John Hancock is we really kind of changed the game there. And so in 2015, we actually launched a partnership with a company called Vitality, which is really kind of this interesting shared value model on life insurance. So if you show us, you're doing things like going to the doctor, exercising, eating healthy foods, getting your vaccines, in theory, you're going to live a longer life, right? And so we'll benefit from that as an organization. So we should share that benefit with you. And certainly one major benefit of that is just living longer and living, that longer, healthier life that we want all of our customers to live. And that's ultimately probably the most important benefit. But we also bake in things like rewards with some large brands you would know there. And then you can also save up to 25% on your premium if you're demonstrating that you are making these healthy choices on a day-to-day basis. And that doesn't mean you're running marathons and you're only drinking green juice. These are kind of everyday things that we're all doing to kind of, make that smart choice one day at a time. And you'll see that over time, those smart choices add up and you benefit from it. And actually, in terms of kind of explaining it, if we have time, just a quick video that might kind of help bring it to life for everyone.
Please. Okay, so I think it's the first video.
It's the Vitality video. It should be labeled.
I think there you go.
Buying life insurance is one of the most important things you can do. After all, it's not just about planning for your financial future, but also having peace of mind that your loved ones are protected. When we created John Hancock Vitality, we combined all the benefits of traditional life insurance with the one-of-a-kind program that rewards people for the everyday things they do to live a longer, healthier life. No matter how big or small those things are. Our customers love Vitality so much that they're twice as likely to recommend Vitality compared to other life insurance. That's because Vitality is helping our customers save money at the grocery store, on hotel stays, on the latest wearables, and more. There's even a chance to win gift cards from top retailers. Not to mention, our customers can save up to 25% off their premium. What's more, Vitality can help people make the most of every day. Our customers report they are more active and are losing weight. They're also learning how to get better rest for their body and their mind. Vitality even has special tools and resources specifically for people living with diabetes. More than 4 out of 5 customers say Vitality has positively impacted their lives. Find out what all the excitement is about. Ask about a policy with John Hancock Vitality today.
Awesome. So probably a much more articulate description of the program than I provided, but ultimately the differentiator in Vitality, right? It is that shared value proposition, which is really important to customers. But at the end of the day, it's this ongoing opportunity to engage with our consumers, right? So as I mentioned before, you buy life insurance and you pay your premium once a year and you kind of want to just set it and forget it a little bit. But this is a really good opportunity to remind people that life insurance is one part of a bigger financial decision, a bigger part of decision you make for your life. And health is an equally, or if not more important part of that decision. So through this partnership with Vitality, we engage with customers on a daily basis. They tell us what they're doing. They tell us when they're exercising. They tell us when they're going to the doctor, because they're going to benefit with those rewards and premium discounts and those kind of healthy outcomes that the video talked about as well. So it's really kind of changed the game and helped us kind of create that direct relationship with those consumers.
Yeah. And I love it that it is a two-way street. You're really encouraging your clients to be healthier, and it's kind of good for everyone. So I love that sort of value proposition that you've kind of got in front of your clients. And also what I really love as well is that I've noticed that you're providing a service for specific groups who have difficulty potentially getting life insurance. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So you saw in that video there that, we do have a life insurance option for people living with diabetes. And so it's a really good example of how we listen to the voice of the customer. We understand those consumer needs and we address those consumer needs. So, diabetes, huge challenge for us in the United States. I think it's the 7th leading cause of death. And I think there's over 80 million people in the United States living with prediabetes, about 30 million people living with type 2 diabetes, and about 1 million people living with type 1 diabetes. So, huge population that has to, manage their diabetes on a daily basis. But all of these people still need access to life insurance, right? And access to life insurance with Vitality is a huge benefit in terms of helping people lead those longer, healthier lives. So this partnership we have, our product is called Aspire. It's life insurance for people living with diabetes. And so in addition to that Vitality program that we talked about, it also has allowed us to have some other partnerships that help people get access to the tools and the resources to help them manage their diabetes. So partnerships with a company called Unduo, which is essentially like an online health clinic for people living with diabetes. So lots of resources, tools, access to experts, hugely important. And that's a joint venture with Verily, which is part of Alphabet. So kind of Google's, Google's company. And that's really kind of great access to just health information in general. So it's really a good example of, leveraging data, providing tools and resources to consumers, helping them get that end need of actually being able to buy life insurance. And once again, hearing what's happening in the world and how can John Hancock help influence that or fix a challenging situation, which, getting life insurance when you have diabetes is a challenge. And so we've chosen to address that. I actually have another quick video if people want to understand kind of how we talk about Aspire to the external market. And that one's a little bit quicker, I promise.
The story of your life is made of many details. Diabetes is just one of them. So it shouldn't keep you from getting quality life insurance. John Hancock Aspire is the first and only life insurance designed for people living with diabetes, offering savings of up to 25% on your premium. Get a free quote at johnhancock.com/aspire.
That's fantastic. That's so great. I love these partnerships that you're building as well with outside partners to really create sort of positive engagement for your client base. I know that you've also done something extremely interesting with Allstate. Would you mind just expanding a little bit on that one?
Sure. So partnerships are a huge part of, our success at John Hancock with Vitality. So anyone that's a John Hancock customer, you can report kind of your activity and any other healthy behaviors through wearables. So we have a great partnership with Apple, with the Amazon Halo, with Fitbit. So kind of a lot of those leading tech partners. And once again, those are things people are, wearing, leveraging on a day-to-day basis. So how do we fit into that as opposed to like, how do we expect them to come fit into our world? That's asking way too much from a consumer.
Yeah.
And Allstate's another really good example of that. So John Hancock now is one of 3 carriers Allstate can sell our life insurance policies, which is great. But we also recently teamed with Allstate to reward vitality points for people that are, deemed safe drivers through that Allstate program. So just as much as we reward people for, making the right food choices or going for a walk or going to the doctor, like getting in your car every day and choosing to, follow the speed limit and make other safe choices about driving is also going to help you live that longer, healthier life. Yep. So you should be rewarded for it. So once again, it's something else that's happening in the market. It's something else, people understand how that works and the shared value component. So it only made sense for us to connect with Allstate on that. So we're really, really excited about the partnership.
That's amazing. And would you mind just explaining a little bit more about that Apple devices as well? Because I think that's really interesting.
Sure. So, all of us have our wearables on a daily basis.
Try to.
Right, exactly. Sometimes too much, and you almost have to take it off and just step away for a minute. But ultimately, that really helps automate the process, right? Because we say we want to make life insurance like easy to buy and fun to own, but also easy to own. Yeah. So at the end of the day, kind of automating a lot of that reporting is super helpful, and it just kind of makes this the Vitality partnership part of everyone's like everyday life, right? And it's not extra work. It's just rewards and incentives for the things that you're already doing. And so that's just a really good example of how we've been able to kind of partner with some tech partners to bring that to life. I mean, technology partners in general are really, really important for us. I mentioned that idea of making life insurance, easy to buy and fun to own. And the reality is for those of you on this call that have bought life insurance or have, through the years, I remember growing up, like one day someone came to our house and like took my mom's blood and weighed her. And I was like, what is going on here? And then she explained life insurance to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're going to die. So, it's kind of, it's a process. It's a very in-person process. Yeah. And it takes a long time. And through, partnerships with a company called Silverado and Human API, like we can leverage electronic health records and kind of speed up some of that process. So making the buying process a lot simpler and making it tech enabled has been hugely important for us as well.
Yeah, no, I'd imagine. And has there been sort of a change to your consumer, especially obviously, again, this pandemic's been going on for quite some time now, but again, you start to think about yourself, your health, a little bit more. So how has that changed the way you think about from the last couple of years, your consumer habits? So
sure. So, I mean, we all know, right? Unfortunately, death has been in the news quite a bit over the last few years, but we've seen, people being much more aware of their health and the choices that we make. And we all know, with COVID, if you had underlying health conditions or challenges, you were much more susceptible to being really, really challenged if you were to contract COVID. So, being healthier, living healthier lives has been much more top of mind for people. I mean, we saw, it was probably about a year ago now, right? It was, I forget whose survey it was offhand, but the top 3 concerns for Americans were family number 1, health number 2, and security number 3. And security included things like financial security. So if you think about life insurance, right, and that trifecta, like that's the perfect kind of combination or time for us to be available and accessible to consumers to help kind of meet that need. So as health has been top of mind for people are more aware of their health, taking kind of more deliberate actions to address their health. We're a really great partner once again in rewarding you for that and helping kind of share that benefit with you. And at the same time, offering you that ultimate protection of life insurance for your family if you were to need it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's really interesting. And, again, everything that we've talked about is kind of filtering back to your brand and John Hancock. And obviously the trust is extremely important. So, how are you kind of your website, for example? I mean, I have to say, I'm a huge fan of your website. I think congratulations. It's really easy to navigate. It's very educational. Whoever's on this call, please go and check it out because, I spent hours looking at the wealth map of America, and there's some very interesting facts and pieces of information that are relevant, especially for what's happening in the world today. So, how did that go about? Because for you, it must have taken some convincing from an investment standpoint. How did that come to fruition?
Sure. So digital transformation, and that includes our website, right, has been a priority for us for the past few years. And certainly, COVID accelerated a lot of the need for that digital transformation to bring it to life, right? But it also kind of helped us speed things up a bit.
Yeah.
And so once again, the website's one example of that, but being able to, buy our products in kind of a more tech-enabled way is another example of that. Even things like our customer service options. So just things as simple as like having chat available, making our phone numbers like really easy to find because they weren't really that easy to find before, because some people do want to call, some people do want to go on a social channel and ask for help that way. Some people want to self-serve through our website, which is what we've really focused on during the last few years. So thank you for those kind words, and that the investment wasn't necessarily hard because it was the right thing to do for our customers. And so ultimately, like all of the decisions that we make, it's like, how is this going to serve the customer? How is this going to make their experience better? How is it going to align to that mission that I talked about earlier? And so, improving our website was a huge priority there. We have a really amazing, strong team of human-centered design experts, research experts that are listening to the customer, an amazing digital team, a great design team, a great copy team, and they're all working together to really put this customer at the center of everything we do. And so that's that website experience that you just talked about. It's all customer driven. And on a regular basis, we're looking at those satisfaction scores and verbatims and, making improvements, and people's expectations have changed quite a bit, but like, it's not this time of like before the pandemic and after, like they're constantly changing. So you have to be listening to the customer on a regular basis and understanding that like what was true yesterday is probably not going to be true tomorrow. And so how are we agile? How are we listening to that? How are we thinking about the experience kind of in real time?
No, absolutely. Actually, we've got an interesting question from Dave Edwards. Kate, you spent 7 years at Deloitte. How did that job prepare you for your current role? And I think actually, a lot of what you just said is probably a good example, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, we had mentioned before, or I had mentioned before, that Deloitte was a really great organization to kind of grow up in terms of my marketing career, right? And ultimately, like Deloitte is an organization where there's so much great research and data out there, right? And like you're hiring Deloitte because you're hiring people, and you're hiring those people that can look at trends, look at what's happening in the industry, look at what's happening at the world as a whole, and seeing how does that impact businesses? How can this improve your business? Where might this be a challenge? Like what could be a watch out there? So once again, it's really listening to both the customer and the world as a whole, taking those trends, taking that data, but then like humanizing them and figuring out what makes sense for that end customer. And that customer could be a person, or in the case of Deloitte, that customer is a business, right? But at the end of the day, you're really taking those insights and then figuring out how they're going to help address a business or a human need.
Yep, no, absolutely. I've got another good question here from Steve. Hey, Kate, how do you think about customer loyalty in this category? Have you seen programs like Vitality improve loyalty and reduce churn?
Yes, absolutely. So, customer loyalty, incredibly important. As I mentioned before, in the past, before a program like Vitality, like you get, you'd pay your premium and that would be it, right? And there's like a big gap of time between you pay one premium and the next premium where frankly, like loyalty can be a real challenge. So once again, getting those rewards on a regular basis is hugely important to keeping people engaged. And when you're engaged, you're just more loyal. But actually, we had an interesting kind of to answer that question in kind of a more real-time example. John Hancock, we are the principal sponsor of the Boston Marathon. So arguably one of the most kind of prestigious elite races in the world. We've been a principal sponsor for over 30 years, really important to our organization. We've raised over $400 million for nonprofit partners in partnership with the Boston Athletic Association. So it's great in terms of almost like demonstrating that shared value for a sponsorship as well. But this year we decided to actually offer some opportunities to run in the marathon to some of our Vitality customers.
Brilliant.
So we were able to see, and it's funny actually, during this call, some of them are learning that they're going to be running. So it's two great things happening. And be on the lookout kind of for more information about this program, because we were really excited to share it. But we were able to see, Vitality members that were doing those kind of long endurance events, because for anyone here that's run a marathon, like you can't just, the marathon's in the middle of April, like if you're not really already kind of endurance event ready, it's probably going to be pretty hard to get up to speed in a couple months. Yeah. But we were able to see the members that had done activities like that because they chose to report that to us, and we told them, like, you have this opportunity to run a race, but to run the Boston Marathon, but tell us what it would mean to you. And so it was just like, marketing 101, user generated content, but the amount of videos that we got back, and unfortunately we didn't, we only had 50 slots, but we got some amazing stories back from members saying how the Vitality program has helped them, recover from injuries, make smarter nutrition decisions, keep them motivated. Like one person that submitted a video is just saying, every time she gets her reward, she chooses like a Starbucks card, and she just sends it to her dad because he like loves getting us, like, what dad doesn't love getting, a free Starbucks card in the mail. And so just like very like simple human examples of how this program has become part of everyday life. And like the willingness for these customers to be true brand advocates has been amazing. And I'm so excited to see them cross the finish line in just a few months.
That's fantastic. Do you think you'll run?
I will not run, but I will be there cheering.
That's the best. That's better.
I joke that my team runs the marathon because they oversee the sponsorship, but I'm pretty sure it's much more of a feat to actually run the marathon.
So look, we've only got a few minutes left, but I would love to know a little bit more about and understand your internal customer, obviously being the CMO, and a little bit in terms of also, how does your role support all of these businesses? Like, what is your sort of internal, who are you representing internally?
Sure, absolutely. So when we say marketing at John Hancock, right, and the role of the CMO, that's kind of overseeing the whole breadth of kind of what you would, what any one of us would consider marketing. So things like brand and sponsorship that I mentioned earlier, product marketing. So, life insurance products, like there's all sorts of different products. And like, we need a really strong product marketing team that could explain the benefits and the nuances of those things. We have a really strong human-centered design and research team that I mentioned as well. So getting those customer insights on a regular basis, and customer experience team. So NPS is a hugely important metric for us. So kind of taking those NPS insights and then democratizing those throughout the organization. So not just marketing knows what's going on, every single person knows what's going on and what's going well and what we need to focus on and what we really need to prioritize for the customer is hugely important. Another very important area to us is our advanced analytics team. So leveraging things like analytics, artificial intelligence to once again improve the customer experience, to kind of predict servicing intents, figure out what the customer needs in advance, right? So that we can continue to kind of deliver on those needs in an efficient way. So the customer has that great experience. So that's kind of what marketing at John Hancock is. And I mentioned the customer, but like everyone at John Hancock owns the customer, right? And I don't mean own in a we're in charge, but we are all responsible for the customer and the customer experience. And, we do that through what we call our continuous delivery organization. So we actually look at those customer journeys, both for those producers that I talked about, and then the end customer as well, and kind of understand everyone's role across those journeys and accountabilities. And that at the end of the day, if we see something that needs to be improved or needs to be better, anyone should speak up about that. So I think kind of that shared responsibility for the customer is hugely important. In terms of kind of internal customer, I think of it more as a partnership. So everyone really believes in the importance of delivering that amazing customer experience that we talked about. Everyone feels accountable to it. So, certainly, marketing should lean in certain areas. Our legal team might need to lean in certain areas. We'll need our finance team if we're doing some paid effort. So everyone has a role to play in delivering on that mission. And, I talked about our values earlier, and one of them is getting it done together. And day to day, everything we do for the customer really is because we can get it done together.
Yeah. Kate, you're amazing. I have to say, I could listen to you all day. I love the ideas. I love these partnerships, and I love the value proposition that you give to your clients. I mean, I just think that is really interesting, and really congratulations. It's fantastic.
Thank you. No, this was really fun. And once again, if you want to learn more about the program, feel free to reach out to me. If you just want to talk about John Hancock or anything else, always happy to connect. And this was a great conversation. It flew by.
I know. Thank you so much, Kate.
Awesome. And thanks to the
Thank
Brand
you both
Innovators
for joining. Yeah, what an awesome conversation. And to your point, it really did fly by. I feel like felt like 20 minutes. So was really great. So thank you both again for taking the time, and we look forward to seeing you again on the virtual stage soon.
Awesome.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Kate. Have a good
Thanks,
one.
Rachel.
Bye. Bye, Bendy.
All right, so we've got our next fireside chat coming up between Nina Alexander Hurst, who is the Director of Marketing and Communications for Waldorf Astoria Maldives Ithafushi. I think I said that right. And our moderator joining her is Matt Kilmartin, who's the co-founder and CEO at Habu.
Hey, Matt.
Hello, welcome.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good. Thanks so much for joining us today. Looking forward to this chat. And that said, I'll kind of pass it over to you two.
Awesome. Hey, Nina, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good, thanks. So I thought maybe we just start with some high-level introductions, and then we can jump into it. So Nina, do you want to go first, and then I'll introduce myself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Nina Alexander Hurst. I am very excited to be back on the virtual stage with Brand Innovators, previous 40 Under 40 award winner, and a strong supporter of Brand Innovators. I really, really miss the in-person events in New York City. Hard to do them from the Maldives, but I'll be back. But yeah, I am currently the Director of Marketing and Communication at Waldorf Astoria Maldives, one of the best Waldorf Astoria resorts in the world, and also within the Maldives. So we're we target a high net worth audience. Our average daily rate usually around $3,000. We also have a private island, which is $85,000 a night. So right now I'm doing marketing, global marketing for the resort. And previously I was at Hilton as the Senior Director of Global Brand Marketing and Partnerships. And before that, startups, Bobble Bar, many things before that.
Awesome. Thank you, Nina. Yeah. So as you can see, just from Nina's introduction, she's got, first of all, she's got a cooler job than all of us right now, that she's sitting here from Zooming from the Maldives, but also has a really impressive background from sort of property at Waldorf to Hilton to retail e-commerce as well. So really looking forward to this fireside chat. My name is Matt Kilmartin. I have the pleasure of working with Nina today on this chat, and I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Habu. Habu is a technology company. We provide software primarily for brands and helping them develop insights, measurement through privacy-safe data collaboration with key partners. So doing a lot of work with brands, with media companies, with brands, with partnerships, with retailers and CPG. So a lot of companies that have common business interests, they're using our software for privacy safe data collaboration. So that's a little bit of Habu. We'll definitely touch on data and some of these other themes as we get into it. But I think, I had a pleasure of meeting Nina a few days ago, and I think just her journey to the Maldives is super interesting in terms of just from her sort of career and progression as a marketer, what she's doing now. So Nina, I think it'd be interesting just to share a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, I am a strong believer in that the right things come along at the right time, especially if you're willing to take a risk. And so most recently, I was at Hilton, as I mentioned, and then the pandemic hit, obviously a challenging time in hospitality. And I actually moved to Georgia, and I was working on the elections at the end of 2020. Which was some of the most fulfilling work that I've done. And I said to a friend, working in the corporate office at Hilton has been amazing. I have startup fashion experience. But if I ever had the opportunity to work on a property and it was one of the best properties in the world, like I would love to do that, but it's COVID. So like, how would that be possible? And then a few weeks later, I got a call from Waldorf Astoria Maldives that they needed help setting their marketing strategy. They needed someone to come for 3 months. And my brother in Atlanta was like, please don't go. You just moved here. We're so excited to have you. And I was like, it's just 3 months. Obviously I'll be back in 3 months. It's the Maldives. Who stays there for a long time? But here I am still in the Maldives more than a year later, because the work here is so interesting. The resort is like, nothing else I've seen in hospitality. I wanted to learn operations on the ground to go along with my marketing experience. So even doing partnerships globally for the luxury brands for Hilton is so much easier now that I understand how these properties run, what kinds of partnerships I'm actually going to be able to get off the ground, how social works, how the marketing team interacts with all of these other operational teams. This is by far the best property in the world to do that. And at the same time, I get to market globally to this high net worth audience and really target like what is truly a ultra high net worth guest. And do it using all channels, PR agencies. I have 5 PR agencies globally. I have a digital agency, creative agencies, pretty much everything that's necessary to target these people. It's like, this property, it's a business unto itself, truly. So I definitely took a risk. It's unusual to go from corporate to property level, but I've learned so much throughout the past more than a year that I have no regrets. So while I didn't expect that this was going to be my the next step in my career, it's been fulfilling in so many ways.
Yep, awesome. Well, first of all, super interesting, and obviously a pretty bold career move, which sounds like just gets you sort of a lot smarter with what's actually happening on the ground there and makes you more effective. So that's great. So, it's interesting. I think, obviously marketers had to sort of rethink how they engage with consumers in light of the pandemic, and obviously the travel and hospitality industry was probably hit the hardest. Just you're on the front lines. Like what perspective could you share in terms of sort of how you thought about things differently and how you guys sort of navigated those times?
Yeah, I would say that the Maldives is a little bit of an outlier in terms of what was happening in hospitality during the pandemic, because the Maldives, for the most part, has stayed open the entire time. And our property, for example, it's 119 villas. They're some of the largest villas in the Maldives. You have your own full-size pool. And so people can come and still be very socially distanced. So we had, in 2021 was an incredible year. The property's only 2 years old. And so that was essentially the first full year because there was a small shutdown for COVID. And so we were like that dreamy destination that allowed people to escape the COVID world that they were living in a very, very safe way. As staff on property, like we're still masked and everything around guests, but guests are able to sort of have their own space, be outside, and travel freely. So on social media is huge for us. We were named the Hotel Instagram of the Year by Forbes. And a lot of what we do on social is try to allow guests to envision what it's like to be on property. So a lot of the Instagram stories that we're doing, and now Snapchat and TikTok, is giving people that first person view, not necessarily just with Instagram or with influencers or models, but actually making them feel like they are on this property, both for potential guests and for people who just want to dream. So for us, it's been doing more and more and more this year, and really thinking about where our guests are on social, because in the Middle East, it's still very much Snapchat. Whereas in the US, it's not as much Snapchat. We can see that based on all of our guests who are coming. So, Snapchat is now live and running for us. We're running TikTok ads, testing YouTube ads. So this year has allowed us, because we've had a good year, we've also been able to experiment more and innovate and try new things, and see what works and see what's not working and scrap it, and just keep trying.
That's
so
awesome.
We're lucky that we also have a very supportive team that's all about innovation, and we all want to succeed.
Yeah, that's great. And super congrats on the recognition by Forbes on Instagram. If you guys haven't checked out the property, I Googled it after Nina and I spoke, and the pictures are definitely amazing for sure. So could you talk a little bit about what's interesting, like you obviously, for the price points you shared with us in terms of how much it costs to stay just at the core hotel, I think you said a few $1,000s a night or something like that. Obviously that's your target audience isn't the masses per se. So how have you found it sort of being effective to engage with that sort of luxury audience in a sort of appropriate way, if you will?
There's a few different ways that we find to be most successful. One is public relations and having PR agencies globally. So I have a PR agency in New York, in London, in Dubai, in Russia. We also have an agency in China. And what we're able to do by having these agencies all over is target not only like mainstream media, but the niche media for these high net worth individuals, whether it's business press, or some of these magazines that are distributed on private jets. We're really able to, it's difficult to know which are the publications all over the world that these high net worth audiences are reading. And so having experts within each region is really important. And then knowing which of these journalists to bring to property to give them the experience. Also, partnerships is another way that we're really targeting that audience. So for example, we're working on a partnership with an Emirati designer. And by working with an Emirati designer who's well known within like the very influential high net worth audience in the Middle East, we know that when we launch this partnership with her, and it's a very specific product, that it will really make a difference in that market. But other markets may not care about it. Like the United States, media may never pick up this partnership, but it doesn't matter. That's not our goal. Our goal is very much to target this one specific audience. And so as opposed to trying to pick brands that are going to resonate globally, which we do for some partnerships, where we just announced that Zuma is opening on our property. So Zuma Maldives, it's their first restaurant in the region. So we also do things like that. But in terms of, sometimes partnering for PR purposes, we go at a regional level and we can do things much faster.
That's awesome.
And then also working with like yacht companies, other areas where we know our customer is, private jet companies, and really trying to figure out how to tap into that same base.
Yep. Awesome. Well, I know one of the things you did at Hilton and shared with me was around a partnership with Aston Martin. So clearly you've have some experience around doing these partnerships. Could you talk a little bit more specifically? I don't know if it's about the Hilton Aston Martin one or some of the local ones you're doing there, but when you say partnership, what exactly does that mean? And how are you sort of partnering with some of these companies that are sort of similarly targeting the same type of person?
It really differs based on the partnership. And I think that's the magic of partnerships, is finding how two brands can find that middle ground to make something work that's going to be really impactful on both sides. So for Aston Martin and Waldorf Astoria globally, we were targeting the same customer. We each wanted to reach each other's audiences. For Waldorf Astoria, we were able to activate at some of the most well-known car races and events in the world. So we did glamping at the 24 Hours of Le Mans and turned all of the tents in Aston Martin's space into Waldorf Astoria tents with bedding and robes and all of the bath products. So they had this very, very elevated experience while they were literally, you hear the racetrack going all night. So we were also able to bring Aston Martin to our properties to give guests these once-in-a-lifetime driving experiences. And then also do email marketing together and a lot of content creation together so that we could show how these two heritage brands that were also very innovative and really looking to the future, how they were aligning, and we were giving each other credibility by working together. So something like that is really important, at events to target the guests who are there, but also always thinking about how you're amplifying for the people who are not at these events so that you're making the most of these partnership budgets. Yeah. In the case of something like this Emirati designer that I've referenced, that is very specifically creating a bag based on her designs that we know are going to resonate within that market. We're going to be doing a lot of social media around it, how that bag was created, bringing her to property to get influence, and to really, like, one of the designs is fully based on what you see on property. It's just stunning. And it's like her interpretation of the property on these bags that we'll be using for Ithafushi, the private island. And so we'll be doing a full PR press. We'll be doing gifting around it and making sure that people are talking about this, but that it's also something that people are wanting to have, that it's very coveted. For the launch of Zuma, we're going to be working with a private jet company in order to fly people over to have this once in a lifetime Zuma experience. But I can't talk more about that one yet because it hasn't launched yet.
Good. Yeah, no.
But yeah, it's all very different depending on who the partner is. But like I said, the most challenging part is finding another company where it makes sense to work together and then figuring out exactly how you're going to structure it so that the ROI is there, because it takes so much work to get these partnerships off the ground. And I think a lot of people mistakenly believe that partnerships is very easy and they're very quick to make happen. But it can, even the smallest partnerships can be lengthy conversations, and contracts and all of these things that go along with it to make it work. But at the end of the day, it comes down to, like, do these two brands and the people who work for these brands really want to work together? Yep. And if they enjoy working together, that's when the contract, like, the second you have to start pointing to the contract, there's usually like some of that magic has been lost. But if the brands want to work together and they're excited about what they're going to create together, it just goes above and beyond what anyone can ever imagine as they're sitting around the boardroom table, yep, or in a Zoom discussion.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's great to hear specific examples just from sort of having been on the front lines of doing some super innovative partnerships. Is it, you mentioned contracts a couple of times. Is that, like you said, it takes a long time, it's complicated. Like, what are some of the, like, what are the main barriers, I guess, to some of those things? Is it really,
I think the main barriers are usually thinking about the KPIs the KPIs are different for each brand. So finding something that works, that really is going to be strategic on both sides and tap into what both sides need to achieve for the year, that is by far the most challenging part of making a partnership work. Like Aston Martin wants to sell cars, and Waldorf Astoria wants to put guests in hotel rooms. You do those in different ways. And the way you measure it is very different. It's a lot easier to measure if you've sold a car afterward, but also can be challenging because, it might take a year before someone actually purchases that car. Right. So part of it is you have to believe that it's going to work in the long term, because you may not have the tools to measure everything that you want to measure. Yep. And so having all of the leadership at both companies aligned with the partnership is one of the things that will make it successful or not. Because the second that there's doubt in whether a partnership is going to be effective, you no longer have everyone going all in and putting, all of their effort. But it can be very difficult in some regards, especially for when these brands want to align with each other, to truly find the way to measure it beyond, the impressions, and that's all very important. But some of the magic of a partnership, you actually can't measure as effectively unless it's a massive partnership.
Yeah. No, that makes
Although you might have the answer to that.
Oh, well, we're working on it. We're working on it for sure. That's great. So switching gears a little bit, you talked about sort of KPIs and measurement and whatnot, and clearly you're doing a lot of, as you mentioned, trying to sort of help people envision the experience through digital channels. So when you think about your advertising efforts per se, how are you thinking about measurement these days? And I guess, what are some of the key KPIs, and how are you sort of tracking towards those?
For looking at a lot of the advertising we're doing, it depends on which channel, but everything that we're doing to drive to site, we're looking at site traffic, and then all of the KPIs around that: bounce rate, time on site, and then also one of the ways that Hilton really looks at conversion is just getting into the booking funnel. Yeah. And so a lot of it is making sure that it's qualified traffic, and that what we're doing is targeting the right audience, because while we want to drive a lot of traffic to site, that's not necessarily going to be effective for us, because a lot of people dream about going to the Maldives, especially dream about going to Waldorf Astoria Maldives, but they likely can't afford this stay just because of the price point. And so really trying to look at other audiences that we know are going to be effective. That's a lot of the testing that we are doing this year with the new digital agency that we brought on, and also with the work that we're doing with the Hilton Enterprise as well, because they have a very, very strong digital marketing arm. And so we work very closely with them on a lot of our Google ads, and doing testing in Russia with Yandex, and, making sure that we're really on the cutting edge. I think Hilton is they've put a lot of effort into building out the digital marketing that they're doing to make sure that they're always one step ahead.
Sure, definitely. Okay, cool. Well, I definitely want to get some other voices in here, and I've gotten a few questions coming at me via the QA panel as well. So I wanted to throw this one in. So this was a question. It says, Nina, you've spent 6 years at Bobble Bar. What did you learn from that experience in there that you are able to apply to your current role?
I would say those 6 years at Bobble Bar were some of the most formative. I sort of skipped over that in my bio, but my background is startup. Way before Bobble Bar, I started a business selling replacement parts for Blackberries and iPhones. So if you had a Blackberry way back in the day, it had a trackball, and that trackball broke very frequently. And so realizing that that was a problem, first started with Craigslist ads in New York City to see if other people were having the issue, was delivering trackballs by hand, started ordering them from China, built a website around it. And that's how I got the startup bug. And so when I met Amy and Daniela from Bobble Bar, they were just starting. It was 4 or 5 people when I joined. And I believed in what they were doing, the idea of fashion jewelry and putting a brand behind it, this industry where there was like crazy markups and no suggested retail price, and they were doing something so different. And so what I learned at Bobble Bar was, number one, how to build teams, how to be really innovative, how to fail, like how to fail over and over and learn from those mistakes and try new things. A lot of my partnership experience came from Bobble Bar. Like when we launched at Sugar Fix by Bobble Bar at Target, one of the first massive partnerships I did was with Essie. We were able to negotiate with them to get an end cap in the beauty department, where we did a line of jewelry that matched a line of nail polish that was launching. And so for a new brand in Target to get visibility in another department, and we also got an incremental $1 million worth of orders from Target in order to merchandise that end cap. That was one of the first experiences I had with figuring out how to make one of these larger scale partnerships work. But I think even a lot of the social work that I'm doing today is based in influencer. I was able to scale the influencer program at Bobble Bar, and I've taken a lot of what I learned there and applied it to both the work at Hilton and how we use influencers for the partnerships that we were doing there, and also on property now. I think that working at a startup is one of the fastest ways to just learn, because you don't have the infrastructure. So you want your numbers, like you figure out how to get your numbers, because you don't have a full data team sitting next to you that's going to work on it and like hand you buttoned up reports. And so like, you know, if things were going wrong on the back end in Magento, like I knew more about Magento than I ever thought I would, because I'm a problem solver, and like I wanted to help engineers if I could figure out where the problems were coming from that were impacting our customers. Like now, I don't know that I'll have the opportunity to do anything like that again, but I absolutely loved it. Like if you love problem solving, then startups are definitely for you, because it's every day it's solving a different problem. And I actually think that working on property is a lot like working at a startup, because everyone is very, very scrappy. You have the resources of like Hilton Corporate, for example, but you also have to figure out how to do things on your own, whether it's, you know, RFP for new PR agencies in China, or finding a new digital agency that can literally sit anywhere in the world, but figuring out which is going to be the most effective digital agency. I think that my startup background sort of set me up for success here in the Maldives, because there's no challenge that crosses my plate and I'm like, ooh, I don't know how to tackle it. It's like, okay, maybe I don't know, but I know I can figure it out.
Yeah. Awesome. That's a great answer. Speaking of figure it out, I think one of the themes that a lot of marketers are, at least we're hearing, and they're struggling with right now, is sort of the balance between sort of privacy and personalization, right? In terms of, you know, we've all been chased around the internet by those retargeting ads before, but we also know sort of as marketers, there's value in sort of personalized advertising done the right way. And so, you know, the target consumer, you're, you know, even at Hilton and now at Waldorf Astoria, that you're going after is a pretty, you know, high-end customer. And so you obviously want to sort of provide personalized experiences, but you also don't want to sort of track or target people too much. So how do you think about sort of balancing those two things?
We definitely do retargeting, but a lot of it is also like within the rules and regulations that Hilton sets as well. So we're fairly careful about that. I think the good thing about a property like ours is that like if it follows you around the internet, it's just something very beautiful following you around the internet. Like you don't feel bad about the fact that you were searching for something that like you don't want anyone to know you were searching for. It's just beautiful photos of the Maldives just popping up wherever you are.
That's funny. That's great. Cool. Okay. Super helpful. So we've talked a lot about partnerships. We've talked about you know, some of the advertising work you're doing as well. Curious, like everyone's sort of starting to figure out TikTok a little bit, trying to figure out what they should be doing there. And it sounds like you guys are obviously with your work with Instagram, sounds like you're sort of up and running with Snap as well and doing some stuff with TikTok. So how have you found it to be to how have you found it? I guess what have you learned from those experiences, and how have you found it to be sort of collaborating with those sort of emerging platforms, if you will?
I think that for us, like, we're just sitting on so much incredible video content, like to the point where like we walk out of our office and literally point the camera in any direction and it's like a beautiful TikTok video.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the initial testing that we're doing is just putting up all of the content that we have and seeing what sticks. And our agency is also helping with that as well, to help us work on the advertising strategy behind it.
Yeah.
And the same with Snapchat. But right now, a lot of our content, if it's video content, for example, we're putting it across all of the channels, and we're working a lot on content that we know is going to be effective across all of the channels. Because yes, each channel is a little bit different. Like Snapchat and Instagram stories aligns really well. And then the video content that we're doing without quite as much storytelling definitely works on TikTok as well. So like right now, I would say with TikTok, we're in the testing stages, and I think we'll have more data to go off of in probably a month or so. But Snapchat, like we knew we had to be on there because every Middle Eastern guest and influencer who comes, like we have a tool to evaluate the numbers, their engagement, how authentic their audiences are, which is helpful. But originally when I started, like we were really focused on Instagram, whereas some of these people have like very strong followings on Snapchat or YouTube or elsewhere. And we were so focused on Instagram and like having the perfect Instagram that we were missing out on some of this other content. So actually, I think one of the big shifts for us, even just not to answer your question, but just as one of the ways we're thinking about content in social in general, is this idea of influencers who are influential and influencers who are content creators. And so now I really try to look at it through that lens, because when we were just looking at it through the data, we weren't necessarily going to be making the best decisions. Like everyone knows marketing is an art and a science. And so when you just look at the numbers, sometimes you're steered in the wrong direction, because we need a very specific type of content for our own channels. And not all of our influencers can necessarily provide that. But we're bringing influencers from very specific developing markets that we have, because we know that they're going to target that market for us. But the type of content that they put out there, whether it's a long form YouTube video or it's, Snapchat where they're like talking at the camera the whole time, it may not work for us. We may never use that content. Likely we won't, but we know that it's having influence on their audience. So really dividing it between content creators and people of influence has helped us a lot, because a lot of the content creators that we want to work with, who are creating like the dreamiest, most beautiful content, may not truly have an impact with this high net worth audience that we're going for. Like they may have a very strong following that is like looking to them for a dreamy vacation content in general, but those aren't always the people who are then booking, these $4,000 a night villas. And so once we divided it out this year, it made it a lot easier to determine who to work with. And the other thing that we're really good about doing is we have people of influence on our property every day, not because we're hosting them, because they're coming on their own, and figuring out ways to tap into those people and make sure that they feel so appreciated for being there and helping them create Instagram moments. We recently had a movie star from Russia. It was her second time coming, and she was posting and taking these beautiful, like stunning photos. And so like we just helped to make that possible for her. Like everyone thinks that we're paying her to come, but we're definitely not. We don't do that. We're just giving her the tools to create the content that she genuinely loves creating. And so I think that like that is where my startup background comes in handy. It's like, how can you be really scrappy? Like, you know, we don't have the budget to pay everyone to come or anyone to come. I don't think it's the best use of our budget.
Right.
But if we have these people coming, how can we make sure that they're talking about us and that they're tagging us, and that they are like genuinely like advocates for our property because of their experience and not because of a contract that we have in place with them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. For sure. One thing we haven't really talked about too much, I feel like we've talked about content, I feel like we've talked about advertising, we've talked about data, we've talked about partnerships. I feel like we haven't talked about loyalty too much, right? And obviously like Hilton Honors is sort of, you know, the gold standard for loyalty. And obviously Waldorf's a brand within that portfolio. And so whether it's specifically with the Maldives property you're currently at, or with your when you were at Hilton in the US here in corporate, could you talk just a little bit about loyalty and sort of consumer engagement and how that's changing and some of the things that you guys are focused on right now?
Yeah, the Hilton Honors audience is so strong and so loyal, and I think that program it's incredible. The way that guests interact with that program and collect all of these points and dream about which destination they're going to go to, like I'm impressed every day by the Hilton Honors, by that loyalty marketing team. And I think the way that it comes to life on our property is really interesting because our property is definitely one of the top destinations that people want to redeem their points. And to be able to come to property and use points and have this experience is like, like once you come and you experience, you'll understand. It's like
if might be the question.
Yeah, like hopefully you can, because it's this amazing destination, and I think that like it helps all of the Hilton Honors guests dream about the experience that they can have, like what these points can actually bring to them. And whether it's something that they could afford on their own or not doesn't really matter, because once you arrive on property, like that's it, you're our guest and you will have the most incredible experience. And we certainly do extra things for Hilton Honors guests on property, whether it's the Diamond Happy Hour, making sure that they feel like they are so appreciated and loved for the loyalty that they are that they're providing. But I think that the Hilton Honors program is like very, very innovative and really just really, really smart about how they've structured it. And they're thinking about new things every day to keep the guests loyal. I just saw, I believe it was in EMEA that they just, or might have launched globally, but launching, what did they call it? Waitographers, I believe they called it. I could be getting this wrong. I just read the article, but they are training servers and how to do professional photography. So like while you're on these properties, you can have like professional photos taken. Like at our property, we have professional photographers, but I think that's not necessarily the norm. So the idea that they're like even just thinking about how to keep people loyal by training, you know, servers and bartenders with professional photographers on how to do this so that when guests want these photos, it's like going to be, you know, the most amazing photo. Very, very smart. Yep. Google it if you haven't seen it. Like big props to Hilton for this one.
I'll check it out. Yeah, no, one of the things that we talked about is just, I mean, listen, Hilton Honors has been gold standard for a long time with loyalty. And I think some of the things that you've talked about today, it's very clear about how you're sort of merging the digital world with the physical world and experience. So curious, just, you know, from a digital perspective, and obviously, you know, Hilton is investing in a lot of first party data to, you know, help with, you know, consumer engagement, personalization. Do you have in whether you have it from a Hilton perspective or a Maldives perspective, love to hear it, but in terms of just some of the challenges in our ecosystem right now, or changes, I should say, in the ecosystem right now around, you know, a lot of the walled gardens not sharing data with brands anymore, where you know, can't get access to some of the data you used to be able to. And you know, everyone's sort of talking about how do we due to data-driven marketing in this new era where we can't use cookies anymore for targeting. Like, just curious if you're seeing Hilton do any sort of creative things in that front right now to sort of think about data-driven marketing in this new era?
That one I can't really answer on behalf of Hilton. I think for us at a property level, it's like every month brings something different for us to try to figure out in terms of data and how we can best target. And there's, like last month, I looked at the data, and like it was obvious that we were having more trouble with our targeting, and it was a couple of weeks ago, because a lot of these new rules. But like, I think we'll all figure it out. It's like every time Instagram changes the algorithm, like we don't know what's happened, like why all of a sudden a piece of content that was doing like so well before, all of a sudden, like no one is even seeing it. And like within a few months, everyone figures out another way around it. And it makes us all like stronger, and makes, as users, makes us feel a little bit more comfortable that we're not being tracked all over the place. So I think that like in time, like we'll figure it out, and I'm sure that Hilton will come up with like a very, very strong solution, and all of that trickles down to the property level. So I don't have an exact answer for that one.
I think,
but I wish I did.
In terms of just, some of the themes you talked about in terms of testing and innovating and staying scrappy, I think are all relevant themes in terms of adapting to times of change. So cool. Well, I'm cognizant of time. I think we're supposed and they're on cue. There's Madeline. I think we had till 12:40. I think some of the other questions have been cleared out. So I think I've really enjoyed the chat, by the way. It was awesome to hear about all your experiences and whatnot. And thank you for the discussion.
Thank you. No, this was great.
Thank you guys so much.
A perfect end to my day.
And she's doing this from her vacation, Madeline, so she should get extra credit.
I know. This is so unfair. And I'm in the cold. I'm in Minneapolis, so I'm in like the complete opposite situation. So
yeah, you can't feel bad for me. I'm on the beaches in the Maldives. It's okay.
Yep. Well, thanks so much for taking the time, and amazing to hear, about your experience, and specifically the influencer strategy was really interesting to me. So really cool and awesome to hear about the work you're doing. So thank you so much for joining. Matt, thanks so much for moderating. It was great to have you both. We look forward to seeing you guys again, hopefully soon. And then hopefully we'll see you, Nina, in New York City, down the line. Stay tuned for in-person events if you're ever back in town.
Definitely.
All right.
Thank
Have
you.
a great rest of your day. Yep.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, so we've got our next session, which is going to be brought to you by Melissa Grady, who's the CMO at Cadillac, with her moderator, Lizzie Wildheim, the SVP of Ad Innovation and B2B Marketing at SXM Media.
Melissa and I are super excited to be here. And I think it's going to be a really fun conversation all about cars and everything that is going on at Cadillac. So I'd like to welcome Melissa Grady Diaz. I don't know. I feel like we need applause for you, Melissa.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I agree. Fun to be here on a Friday before a long weekend. What a good way to start with some fun conversation.
Exactly. And what an amazing time to be at Cadillac. You may have the best job in the automotive space right now. Thinking back to CES, we all weren't there together, but Mary, the CEO of GM, announcing so much innovation in and around electric cars, in and around driver capabilities and experience. And so I'd love to start there. You're here for it in this moment, and you get to be at the most innovative brand, even within, I think, the portfolio, right? With Cadillac promising to be ahead of the EV movement, even ahead of the broader GM portion of the company. So kick us off with, everything you announced at CES, and tell everybody about the Lyriq, which I think is more of a jewelry box on wheels. So take it away.
Explain why I have the best job in automotive. Absolutely. So yeah, it is a really, really exciting time to be at both Cadillac and GM. GM's vision is 0, 0, 0, 0 crashes, 0 congestion, and of course, zero emissions. And as we move to that, we are really trying to accelerate not even the industry, but just everyone moving into EV. So it really gives a lot of purpose, going back to the last conversation, it gives a lot of purpose to what we do and to really how we feel every day when we're working. We had a lot of announcements at CES. One of them was the Silverado Ev. That's a Chevy product, which will be an EV pickup. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So I really encourage everyone to go check it out. And then from a Cadillac perspective, we were really talking about autonomous and this very future vision of where we're going, which is, we have something called the iSpace, which is if you start to think about travel moving into, as we think about autonomous driving, right now, that really means hands-free driving. But where that's moving to is this luxurious pod. I think of it almost like if you think about on an airplane, a first class pod where you're just relaxing, you have movies. This can even get into biometrics, so it can work into scent and temperature to make sure that you're comfortable. And so it becomes, instead of an active journey as you're going longer distances, a really passive experience for you where you can read, you can get work done, you can relax. So really absolutely amazing as we start to look at that future vision. On the road to that, we have the Lyric, which, as you said, is, I think a jewelry box on wheels is a great way to describe it. The Lyric is absolutely one of my favorite vehicles that I've ever not even worked on, but seen. I can't wait to get mine. It is Cadillac's first EV, and it's just absolutely beautiful. There's all these little jeweled elements. There's little surprises within. We have the merlettes, are the little ducks that used to be in our crest, and those are hidden throughout the vehicle. But it's absolutely amazing. It's got over 300 miles of range, and is the beginning of the transformation at Cadillac.
Yeah, I know when I was looking at the car, your interiors designer is a female, and I was thinking that the dial looks a lot like a Rolex wristband, like jeweled dial.
It's definitely like got the jeweled look to it. There's the knurling around it. It's really beautiful.
So you're internal at a big car company. Share with us a little bit more about this cockpit experience and what you guys are forecasting are going to be the new behaviors, because it's an incredible shift to think that the 4 hours plus that people spend, maybe not, this last year, but the 4 hours plus that most Americans spend in their cars, I think we can all think about the tasks that is. It's paying attention and being safe and two hands on the wheel and all just more traditional driver behaviors. But when you think about autonomous, and then you think about electric and the planning required for that, and then you think about this beautiful experience with all these screens, what does that look like? And maybe the future is not that far off in terms of this big shift for in-car experience for passengers.
Yeah, I think, a lot of people have heard this said before, there will be more change in the next 5 years of automotive than there has been in the past 50. And a lot of what that looks like, and it's this path to what I was talking about with this autonomous experience, but the in-car experience. And it's sort of like if you think about the evolution of a cell phone and how a cell phone went from a, dial pad and you could talk on the phone to this whole software enabled app universe that allows the phone to be so many other things, entertainment, an exercise tracker. It facilitates our meetings. We could be doing this on our phone. It's this amazing thing that happens once you bring in the software ecosystem. That's what's about to happen on the vehicle. And so as we start to look at what is enabled by being able to download software, by over-the-air updates that are coming, the way that we interact with the cars, the way that we can personalize our vehicles, both before we get them, so that they're ready when we get into them. And then once we have them, you're used to your car, you drive off the lot, and then, there's this saying of like, your car was like at its highest value and the best that it'll ever be when you drive it off the lot. That's changing. Our vehicles are going to start getting better and better over time because of us being able to download software and change the experience. So it's pretty amazing once you start to really think through the implications of this.
Yeah, and I think you and I talked in the prep. I have a car that does update over the air, and the car I bought is not the car I have 3 years later. And so as a marketer, to continue to sell a car week over week, month over month, given that reality, and then stay connected to the customers that are your existing drivers, like how does that impact just the basics of how you think about media and creative? Because it's not like, here's the car, here's the brochure, here's the 30-second ad that's going to work for an entire model year even.
Yeah, it's, I think we've already, with vehicles, you think about how do you enhance that ownership experience, because we're not a short cycle purchase, it's a much longer cycle purchase. And so, in automotive for years and years, we've been thinking about owner programs and how do we communicate people and what does that look like? This opens it up to the next level to make it so much more fun. So, whereas your emails before may have started with tips and tricks and then kind of trickled down over time, so you were just part of the family until now your lease is almost up, what are we going to tell you? This is now moving into, in-app, in-vehicle, still emails, but how do you engage with the car? How do we let people know about these fun software drops that are coming? I mean, it's turning it into, it's turning an area of the business that's been a little bit, I love the puns, it's been on autopilot for years, into something that is really exciting and will allow each person to have a unique vehicle that they want. And we get to help enable that. So we think about, how is the app going to evolve? How do we target owners and let them know about this? What's the in-vehicle experience that we're controlling? And it's a whole new world.
But what comes with personalization and, this one-to-one connection creates many a challenge in terms of addressing audiences, understanding who your audience is and who the potential customer base is for this car line and this big evolution. How are you going to leverage data and consumer insights along the way to, make sure you're like showing up in that authentic way to all of this customer base that you need to drive?
Yeah, this is something that has really been core to Cadillac's strategy for quite some time. So we basically, we look at demographics, but we basically threw away demographics a few years ago. We don't target by demographics. So we try to first understand on an individual basis who is our target, and we actually modeled out the whole entire US and did a propensity model. And so now we know who are most likely, I call them our future Cadillac family, like who are those people? And then with that, because we now know who these people are, we can look at how and when and where do we interact with them. The other thing that's really important about that is that we can use that data to have insights about people. And an example is this, which I think it's one of the most fun that I think we really had. And that is, as we went through and analyzed the data, and we used Cadillac owners and modeled out the future owner file from that. And the title that came up the most was president and CEO. And the reason for that is that Cadillac tends to have a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of self-made people, these very driven people, and that comes through in the data. And it's so interesting because then we understand the spirit of an entrepreneur, the spirit of someone who is so self-driven, and that can help us understand how do we interact and what's the right way to have this relationship with both our owners and our future owners.
Yeah, I was looking at the Twitter feed for Cadillac preparing for this and just loving the personalities and entrepreneurs and those, I think you use the tagline, go with audacity or be iconic, and just this, this spirit for you're trying to connect with someone that has that fire about constantly trying to push themselves, and that we know the Cadillac brand has stood for that for a long time. Will you be working through, social? I hate to bring up the metaverse because it's been talked about for the last 4 days, and I don't think we want to go to an NFT space, but there's still a universe in the digital ecosystem that's evolving pretty quickly. And with everything you stand for, knowing that that personality type is one to forge ahead into new spaces, how are you going to show up there? And are you, already coming up with plans for that?
So I think so many different ways to go with that. I think as far as trying new things and being at the forefront, it's just something that I personally really believe in. I like to always push us to try new things, because that's how, when we think about ourselves and how we engage with things, we like to engage with new things. If you think about like digital advertising and banners, if you think about when digital banners first came out, people were really looking at them, clicking on them, interacting with them. Now we have banner blindness, right? So it's a very old school but very relatable example of, same with Facebook. In-feed advertising used to be, when it first came out, you'd look at that and you'd want to interact with it. Now when we look at things, we really have to be doing things very differently. All that going way old school to go way new school, those things, the NFTs, the metaverse, all of that at some point will be something we look back on and say, remember when that was new. So we're definitely going to be in that space. And when I say in that space, more looking at NFTs and what does that mean from a GM and Cadillac perspective. As we look at the metaverse, I think of the metaverse more as how is digital and the web evolving. Things are becoming more immersive. And we find this, we have immersive units that we use in some of our in-market advertising. We've done some AR and VR executions, like a Cadillac Live. We used to have VR in a few of our dealerships. So as you start to look at how are people engaging and how do we make that more immersive, especially, we're all getting very tired of this 2D looking at screens. So how does that all evolve? I think there's so much there. And so what the metaverse means and how that unlocks different things in Web3, et cetera, I think is going to be really interesting over the next year or so. But it's an area where I think we're going to see a lot of fun things, and I'm very excited about.
Yeah, I agree. But you mentioned Cadillac Live, and I apologize. Of course, the gardener is right outside my window with the blower. So that's what happens here in the virtual conference experience. Texting my son, get the gardener. Anyway, Cadillac Live, I would love for you to explain it as we think about retail and retail experiences. And then we cross that over with this personality type you're talking about. I think, a self-made president of their own company has zero time to go into dealership maybe and want to spend an hour and a half researching a Cadillac. And so you guys created Cadillac Live. I went through the experience and was super impressed, but tell me about it. Any initial insights or behaviors that you can share about really the future of retail for buying cars?
Yeah, so I think just to explain to anyone who doesn't know what Cadillac Live is, it's almost like a personal auto show. So we have product specialists that are in a showroom. We have all the Cadillac vehicles there. Not the Lyric all the time yet, but we do have a virtual experience that can be there, and it'll pass through a few times before it comes to market. But basically, you dial in, it's a one-way Zoom call, think of it that way. So your camera's off, so you can be in your PJs with your slippers up on your couch, and you're talking to a product specialist who you can see, they move around the vehicle, they can answer any questions. And they can even show you, if you're a golfer, how do your golf clubs fit in the back of an XT4, XT5, XT6, and Escalade? Where does the stroller fit well? It looks like there's a lot of headroom in the third row of the XT6. Let's have the really tall guy get in there and let me see what that looks like. So it's a really, really unique experience because it is like a personal auto show. It is like you're at a dealership with none of the noise around you and you just have this focus. So it's been really interesting. I think we had this just before the pandemic. And really the purpose of Cadillac Live is to answer all your questions, to help you get to the point so that you can go to the dealership, kind of get your final questions answered, test drive, and then hopefully purchase. We have really seen, what's amazing is we have some sessions that have gone over an hour. People come in and they really talk. On average, it's more like 10 to 15 minutes. So you're not seeing, those longer sessions all the time, but we're really seeing people ask questions, engage, and it's really amazing. I think it's one of many things that we look at as we look at the future of car buying, which is, as you said, a president, a CEO, an entrepreneur doesn't have a lot of time. We know that we have to meet people where they are. It's really the only way that you can create an experience that people love, and that's really what we want to do. So whether that is meeting you in your living room because you have questions about a car, or getting you the right information in a more immersive and fun way so that you understand things, so that we can help you along the sales process, to enabling as much of the sales process online as possible. Maybe you are really busy and you want to have that whole sales process online. Well, we have something called Shop, Click, Drive that's going to allow you to finish that shopping process. And then you can have the dealer come by, you can sign your documents, they'll deliver the car to your home, and you haven't left. So, if that's what you want, or if you'd rather do a little bit online and then go spend a lot of time in the dealership, we want to be where people are. And so it's a really interesting thing of, if the car buying process used to be somewhat linear and consistent, it's very different and unique now.
Yeah, nothing's linear and consistent anymore, right? I know you have a saying within your team about how you're, thinking about how agile you have to be. I think you call it FFA. And I'd love for you to talk just a little bit about your marketer process right now. You think about everything you just described and all this first party data and insight that you now sit on to inform what marketing and media buying really more specifically looks like. So share that with the audience, because I really enjoyed when we talked about it earlier.
Yeah, so FFA is fast, flexible, and agile. The three words as we think about planning right now, we'll put a plan in place, but what the past 2 years have taught us is that the best laid plans aren't necessarily going to come to fruition. So we have to be fast. We need to be able to react to things. We have to be flexible. If you have a very rigid plan, when these changes come at you, you're unable to react to them, and you get stuck. And agile, and what we mean by agile is really, if you think about an agile process, just get something out, see how it sprint, see how people react to it, see how it works, then add on to that, fix it, keep going. So have this agile process so that we're continually and quickly getting better and reacting to consumer feedback. So that's been really, I think, 3 of the principles that we've had over the past 2 years. Now, when we look at really the planning process, we really focus on knowing our audience. So we've modeled them out, understanding where they are and making sure that we're in those places, and then showing up differently. So how do we not just run a 30-second spot? How do we understand where people are and figure out how we can really connect with them, which is really important. I think it's very easy for us as marketers to lean on a 30-second spot, and we've really got to move more towards connection.
Yeah. So connection, I'd love to spend a little bit of time talking about connection through creative. I know you are deeply passionate about building immersive and creative experiences. Maybe an example or two of that audience insight that led to something really different and sort of not your standard media experience, but that still generated scale, because I also know that, the greatest ideas, if they don't scale, are not going to drive business outcome that you need, to drive for the business. So
I'll tell you about my favorite example of this right now. And the reason it's my favorite example is because I wasn't a believer. But that being said, I think we as marketers always need to listen to the data, and we need to be ready to take risks. So an example of this was, and if any of my team are watching, they'll be laughing. When we were launching the Lyric, one of the things that we saw that indexed really heavily with our Lyric EV audience was culinary. And, I said, great, but I don't understand how we bring that into a vehicle launch. It's not, I just don't understand how we're going to do that. And if we were to do that, I don't understand how we're going to scale it. And I said, got it. So they came back to me with a proposal, and the proposal was to work with some Michelin chefs, the Michelin star chefs, and have them create a several course meal that was inspired by the lyrics, so that in each course you're talking about the choreography of the headlights, the beauty of the design, the richness of the interior, all this through food. So that being said, to your point about scale, we created an event, and then I said to the team, now how are we really going to get scale out of this? We've done some work previously with 60-second documentaries. We created 60-second documentaries around this experience. And there's a few things. The event itself, which we had in LA with these chefs, got picked up and was on TV. It was on People magazine. So we really got a lot of scale and just visibility of the vehicle that way. But then these 60-second documentaries, which are, minute long, and you really get to engage with the chefs and hear about the vehicle, those have gotten millions of views. In fact, over 10 million, close to over 15 million views. And so when we look at that, it's something that's going to, if you're interested in these chefs, if you're interested in a culinary event, you're now learning about the vehicle in your language. Because of course, we're always going to have the automotive language and the automotive things, but doing things like that really creates connection. And I was really proud of the end execution and of everyone that worked on it, because I think, they took a really interesting insight and they made it into something that was really unique and created unique connections.
Yeah, I'm looking at the questions here. Lisa had a question that I think is a good follow-up to this, which is, if we go back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the session around just the EV time that we're in for your brand. I mean, you think about the types of Americans that are really climate obsessed and very much value doing good and trying to be a part of reversing the environmental impact of, where we are today. How will you consider that customer type, or, that that customer type into, this exact same example, like the chef? Okay, that was great. But now you've got this added business goal that you're trying to drive against an audience that's really specific about their beliefs.
Yeah, I think, that becomes, there's a few things there. I think overall at GM, we're really working on almost being the company version of that person. We're sustainability obsessed. We're figuring out, honestly, how do we have, how do we accelerate EV? When we look at sustainability from our plant's perspective, and we're already well ahead of schedule on renewable energy and making sure that we're in a good place there. When we look at all that from a corporate perspective, we're driving towards that. And those people who are climate obsessed, or who that's really important to, they are going to know those kinds of things. As Cadillac, we're trying to make sure that we get that information out. I think, if you look at, and I've been paying a lot of attention to the ads lately for sustainability, you're seeing a greater and greater proportion of ads that talk about the company's sustainability promises, goals, et cetera. And I think, it's sort of like a spectrum almost of where you are on it. And we're all going to, as a society, we're moving towards that. I think that by being EV and by using more sustainable materials and driving towards that, it's just a matter of communicating that. But it's really underlying at this point everything that we do. And I think as a society, you're just starting to see that more and more.
Yeah. Well, much of that diversity of storytelling show up with diversity of media mix. I mean, traditionally you see a lot of car ads in the video space. I come from the audio space. Curious about how you think you'll show up. Again, we talked a little bit about the metaverse, but just in places beyond video, which is traditionally where you see the bulk of car investment, for obvious reasons of seeing the car do its thing.
I think, the visual aspect of the car is very important. So, I think we look at how can we use video, we go back to the word immersive, all of those things. I think there's also, we as a brand have been looking at podcasting and other audio formats where we can tell our story a little bit more, because that's the thing about when you move beyond video, you do sometimes have, because attention tends to be longer, I think, sometimes on audio when you're in that type of format. So it allows us to tell stories more, but we really are, I'm trying to follow the consumers here. So I'm always trying to learn how are people are consuming more and more media, and TV viewership's going down. So people are sort of dispersing their attention, and I want to be where they are, and I want to be interacting with them and telling them what they want to hear and how they want to hear it.
Yeah, and you've used influencers in the past, or authentic voices. We think about, there's influencers in the audio space, the video space, the social space. When it comes to ideating with a third party like an influencer, have you seen best practices there? You've done great work, again, posting to Twitter and other communities. But what is the power of that third party validation that drives such a deep connection, but can create such fractured connections across a overarching media plan? So help me understand what's successful there. What challenges have you run into? Where is that headed for you?
I think, when you look at sort of influencers, celebrities, any type of partnership there, for us, the key, and when we see the most success, is when there's a real authentic connection. And I think, to go back to, for us, for a huge example of this is with Regina King. And we, moving in, like just before the pandemic, had rewritten our brand manifesto. And it was really talking about the Cadillac insight, about this driven person who reaches a goal and then sort of says, what's next for me? How do I get better? How do I keep evolving? And after we wrote that manifesto, it was shared with Regina King, who said, wow, this is really my story. And we engaged with her in the Oscars of 2020 for the first time. And she told her story and wove in what Cadillac meant to her, and how there was the similarities between us, really. And it was so powerful, because it was, and authentic is such an overused word, but really, when something is true, when you're tapping into a truth, when you're tapping into a truth about yourself, when you're tapping into a truth about the brand, about society, that's when there's real power. And so I think, that's one example, but there's many of where, something else that we did recently with RZA, and we have AKG, which is very high-end audio in our vehicles. So Escalade was launching our AKG partnership, as we worked with RZA, who has a huge history with AKG, but just obviously, he's a brilliant, passionate person with a true passion for amazing audio. And so that, again, that truth about him and our vehicle and the authenticity, those are the times when the things that we do, I think, are really powerful. And so, there's, examples across the spectrum, but I think that's really the key to it. Now, it does create some, that can't be your media plan. That just needs to be part of like the conversation that you're having. But that's not going to be there's still so many other things and jobs that we have to be done with media.
Yeah, I want to get to a little bit of that, which is the job of media. You've complimented your team on this call. We know it's been a tricky 2 years for many leaders out there to maintain connection to your team, be helping them through this life experience we're all going through, and then be meeting the audience where they are as a brand. So can we switch gears a little bit to talk about your leadership style, how you're organizing your team, what 22 looks like in terms of the team you're standing up to deliver on these really audacious goals for the brand?
I think, our team, we really focus a lot on how to be forward thinkers, how to be first, how to do things differently, because I think that's when we really break through. My team, just the team structure, we have a brand strategy and research group who really help us look at what is the consumer insight and what do we need to be looking at 2 years out, what's forward thinking for us. And they also manage our global. Then we have a product and content group, and they really look at what are the products we're bringing to market? How are we bringing them to market? What are the key important things that we need to be messaging? And what is really the marketing plan around that? Then we have a channel activation team, and that team is all about anywhere where we're interacting with customers, whether that is on TV, whether that is in digital media, on our own sites, CRM, the whole gambit. And the reason that I have that on one team and we have an audience person is that we want to be managing the conversation across. So if you're someone who's interacted with us, who's interested in a vehicle, we want to be personalizing that content, whether it's out on the web or it's on our website or it's in the emails you receive. So that team all works together. And then we have a branding and consumer experience team who really looks at how does our brand show up? What does that look like? What does that feel like? We just went through a whole new Vis ID last year and brand purpose. And so that team is really bringing that to life. So I think, as we look at 2022, we're transitioning. We're going to have our first EVs on the road. It's a really exciting time. And so, I've said before, I really think the biggest part of Cadillac's an amazing brand. And the more that I've gotten into it and the longer that I've been here and understand, this year we turn 120 years old, and we have this history of innovation and really having, standard of the world. It's an amazing history. And so I feel like my job is to unfold that story for everyone else so they understand it the way that me and my team do. And so I think that's, with those people, that's what we're doing this year. And we're really when I look at Cadillac EV and I've seen the products of the future, I am so excited about where this brand is going.
Ooh, I want you to share the things that you're not supposed to share, but I won't put you on the spot. Talking about, audiences and the customer, and thank you for going through how you organize your team, but it sounds like you're at your best when you have the data and the insight that matters to inform all of the future planning. And we know in this environment that it's harder and harder to have that quality and scale of data with the ever-evolving landscape around signals to understand who customers are, understand their identity and their behaviors. How are you evolving just your analytics and data strategy to keep pace with the market? And what partners maybe are really, really working for you?
Yeah, I was going to say, partners for us are key on this one. So when we look at it, we have, the owner data and the people who've interacted with us, we have that data. And I think, we've had a very solid strategy for years on that. As we look at cookie deprecation and how are we going to evolve into that, we've worked very closely with our agency, Cara. They have a platform called M1. And within that, that's where we did our modeling of the whole US. They have the entire US on this platform. Stripped from PII with a lot of information and a lot of direct connections so that we don't need to rely on cookies anymore. So we can define our audience there, and we don't need to rely on a lot of other partners, both from cookies and finding our audience and also from protecting information, so by having sort of a safe room that we start in, and then going out and finding our audience that way, I think it's really set us up for the future. That's not to say that we're there or that it's going to be easy. And I think, as we've taken away a lot of the cookie data that we had, measurement is the area that's become harder. I think, I'm someone who loves data and statistics, and I was so passionate about multi-touch attribution for years, and it's really just, it needs to be different now in how we approach that. So I think looking at measurement, cross-channel measurement, and how we understand how audiences are acting, that's the thing that I think I'm really trying to solve. You almost go back to more of a modeled, if MTA was actual transactions and Bayesian statistics laid on that, we're almost going back to a more modeled version of that to understand, because now you're working with a few different partners in safe rooms and trying to model that back in. So I think that's been more of the question as we start to look at data strategy and analytics.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, as you give a great example about how you're looking at the American population and understanding them for the future, but then there's the customer really understanding that they own their data. And we know that's an evolving space. What do you forecast to be the way a brand plays a role direct to consumer to value exchange against that data? Because the more information you get from them, you've given 5 or 6 examples here, you can stand up the best connection and the best way Cadillac can show up in that customer's life. And I know that goes beyond what probably sits in the M1 data set today.
For sure. And I think this is something, as I look at the trends that I see, the things that I hear, I'm going to go off course from what you just said to bring it back, which is there's a lot of talk now about subscription fatigue. And you really are starting to have people, how many subscriptions do I have? What am I paying for? What am I getting for that? And I think people are starting to realize why they used to like TV way back in the 50s, newspapers, those were really always supported by advertising. And as we've gotten into more modern times, we forget that advertising is supporting the content that we want. And what I think is going to happen is that people are going to start to understand that their data becomes a currency. So instead of, paying for however many subscriptions, if different partners will give you access to content, whether that's movies and TV shows, or that's online news or whatever it is, I think there's going to be places where people are going to start thinking not, how do I protect all my data? I don't want anyone to have it, but who are the people that I trust? And what am I getting in return for it? So I really think as that type of thing evolves, as a brand, it'll give us a lot of opportunities because people will be opting in to hearing about things, to interacting. And it'll also be, the onus will be on us at that point to make sure that it's interesting enough that people do want to engage, or they do want to exchange their data, or they do want to, say, hey, here's who I am, Cadillac. I want you to know through whoever.
Hello, everyone. So that was inspiring. I definitely want to see the lyric and check out the new EV from Cadillac. And also, who doesn't love luxurious pods? I'm looking forward to that with some biometrics. It sounds like it's so intriguing. It's really all about that authenticity and connection with the consumer. Melissa, thank you so much for that very jam-packed, innovative conversation. But hello, everyone, and welcome again to BI Livecast series. My name is Vito, and I am the Vice President of Content and Community here at Brand Innovators. I'll be taking over as MC for the rest of today's events. So we've already had some wonderful conversations this morning, and I'm excited to keep this momentum going. With that being said, I'd love to introduce our new group of speakers, and please help me welcome our panel from the Washington Post. There is Chase Meacham, Head of E-commerce at the Washington Post, Demi Walls, Digital Marketing Specialist at the Washington Post, Joe Mack, Head of Paid Growth, Michael Ribeiro, Global Chief Marketing Officer, and this session will be moderated by Scott Dornblaser, Head of Advertising Sales at Taboola. Welcome, everyone.
Hey, Vito, great to be here.
Great to have you. I think Scott's just popping on now, so I will turn it over to Scott once he up. There's Scott.
There I am, up and running eventually.
Up and running. Love it.
Very good. Thank you, Vito, for the introduction. And it's super exciting for me to be here today to be able to moderate the panel with such fine colleagues from such an amazing publication. just as quick background, my role here is head of sales at Bula. We're a native platform with lots of other tricks and whatnot, and I'll leave it at that. And so in full candor, we work with the Washington Post to help them find audiences and things along those lines. But part of the reason I'm super excited to be here is, the Washington Post has been around since 1877. And so for 145 years, they have figured out ways to adjust and to shift and to apply areas of focus, both long-term and short. And that trend continues today, for sure, with the folks that we have on this panel. So I think what I'd love to do at this point is just go around the room real quick and ask the panelists to reiterate what they do and just a little bit about themselves at the Washington Post. So Chase, do you want to take it away?
Sure. Hi, my name is Chase Meacham. It'll be 5 years for me at the Post this spring. I currently work on our e-commerce flows on site. So that's basically any way where we are able to convert an anonymous reader into somebody that's a known reader to us who has an account. And also any way that we convert readers into subscribers through our paywall, registration walls, our product page, our purchase flow, all of that good stuff. Let me pass the mic over to Joe Mack.
Thanks, Chase. So I'm Joe Mack. I'm the head of paid growth at the Washington Post. I've been here for 4 years. Essentially, I oversee offsite acquisition, and I serve as the team lead for our in-house performance marketing team. I'm internally known as like the data person. My first job in the industry was delivering newspapers. At the age of 15, I used to work for the St. Petersburg Times in Florida. And so the gulf of delivering newspapers, a physical form, to selling newspapers through digital media is actually very close. So we'd love to talk about that. I want to pass it to Demi Walls.
Thanks, Joe. I'm Demi Walls. I help amplify the reach of our Washington Post content to potential customers and through both paid and unpaid avenues, including Taboola, like Scott said. And that's about it. Mike, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks. Mike Rivera here. I'm Chief Subscription Officer. It just means I have the pleasure of working with this team. I'm 5 months into a job, and I have no clue what I'm doing. Maybe I should have said earmuffs to the team first, but I've just been so amazed at all the things that we have done and continue to do. So after that, before I joined the Post, I was in streaming first at Sling and then most recently at Paramount Plus, and then I did some other boring stuff. But really excited about being here today, and thanks so much for having us.
Very good. Joe, very impressive that you delivered newspapers, although I have to imagine it was a little bit easier down in Florida than some of my colleagues up in Minnesota in the middle of winter time.
Yeah, so I did it over the summer at 15. So I learned how to drive while delivering newspapers at night. Nobody out, no traffic. It was wonderful.
Very good. I have to imagine that's instant street cred when you started the job at Washington.
Yeah, it was.
Well, so why don't we lead it off with some questions? The topic of today is around customer engagement. And then being that that's our topic, I wanted to first ask you to talk about how consumers at a media company may be different from how a lot of the audience that's listening may define their own consumers. And how do you engage with these audiences? I know if you wouldn't mind sharing what customer engagement means to you guys and how you approach it, that would be fantastic. And I think I need to throw the question out to specific people, so put people on the spot, and then others can chime in. So I'm gonna throw this one out to Joe first.
Yeah. So as the data person, we always use data to drive actionable strategies, and so to us, customer engagement is at a very top level using the data that we know to create the best high quality customer experience, whether they're on social media or they're in our O&O ecosystem or they're loyal subscribers. It doesn't really matter like where in their life cycle they are. Like a high quality customer experience is just as important through digital media as it is in real life. And so for us, creating a customer journey, thinking about all the touch points and then optimizing those touch points based on data is really important to us. Demi Walls works very closely with the newsroom and with the social media operations. And I think that's where a lot of engagement happens for us.
Yeah, Demi, you want to expand on that a little bit and how, I'm actually really curious about what we determine the product to be of the Washington Post. And is the product the paper itself, or is the product really some of the fantastic writers and whatnot that you have and the type of content they produce? So I'd love to hear your take.
Absolutely. So we're really lucky to work with an amazing team of journalists, editors, reporters, writers who bring the news to the everyday consumer, whether they're in the United States or around the globe. And they're creating, without them, we wouldn't have content that people can use every day to know what's next in their life. They wouldn't have the newsletters that they can tune into daily to know what's happening in the world. They wouldn't have a podcast that they could listen while they're on their way to work or, working out at the gym. And so without them, that is the product that we want to market, like the everyday utility that a news consumer can use. And so it's a little bit of both. So we work very closely with the newsroom to understand what's coming. You can't predict the news. Even we'd love to try, but we work with them very closely to understand what their goals are with the audience and understanding who they want to reach. They're in so many different communities. We want to make sure we're reaching everyone. So that's kind of helps inform our consumer engagement strategy is knowing what news consumers want and understand their needs.
I'd build off that and just say, so like Demi and Joe have said, we operate with a lot of different types of customers and different spots in the customer journey, as well as across different channels. So, I mean, if you think like we could be on a podcast, we could be on YouTube, we're in a lot of these different places, and then like do the cross-reference of, okay, is that person a subscriber? Are they a prospect? Have they never heard the of the post ever? And so I'd say a lot about what we think about is, okay, at those various intersections, like what does engagement mean? I'd say for a subscriber, we're probably very similar in a subscription. We want people to use the product and we want them to use it more frequently in any given month. Not necessarily like spend hours and hours, but sort of number of days within a month. But then when we think, when we're starting to onboard new customers, we might, if we're on a podcast, we might be able to drive a download or drive a listen that's maybe just someone who hasn't thought about the post before. And I think, some of the things that we're doing and we're really planning for, call it, 2022 and beyond is that next generation of listeners, that next generation of news consumers. We want to sort of like, we want to think about engagement in their terms on the platforms that they are. I know we'll get to it and I'm just going to scratch the surface, but we have a TikTok handle with over 1 million organic views. I mean, we have spent $0, not zero, maybe like 1 or 2, but very few dollars in terms of growing that audience. And that's sort of been amazing to me because to see that sort of build organically. I think some people, and you get some of the naysayers, is like, this next generation doesn't want news. Like they don't want your product. And, to me, I point to that as an example of like, sure, I understand, there's some secular declines in how we're thinking about news, but maybe it's just we're not giving it into the right vessel. We're not thinking about the right engagement metrics, et cetera, to be thinking about how journalism is going to be consumed in the years coming.
Well, that's an interesting point, Michael. I imagine even as recent as 5 years ago, when a few of you folks have joined, where and how people consume the content that you guys produce has probably changed quite a bit, and maybe even the demographic. I'm just curious how you sort of touched on it, but I'm curious if you can just talk about how you're gathering data from those different channels and how that goes into the bigger bucket of how you think about maybe even what kind of news or how you report on the news that you do.
Like internally, we are on the precipice of gathering data, centralizing it, and just really understanding like basic marketing, getting to know your customer at a very individual level, and then using mechanisms like soft walls, paywalls, and other marketing touch points to give the right message at the right place at the right time. And so for us, we always want to be where the customer is. And Scott, you had mentioned that we are, an old institution, or we've been around. And for, I think, some younger people, being on TikTok, seeing the Washington Post on TikTok may be kind of out of place. But, data suggests that, as Mike pointed out, that people do want the news. It's just a matter of understanding what they want out of us and creating pathways to conversion. And I think that's kind of what Chase does at the Washington Post, which is using on-site touch points to communicate messages, especially for younger, more mobile audiences.
Yeah, we do a lot of thinking about, our newsroom publishes all kinds of content on a bunch of different topics. People around the world know us for our political coverage, for our opinions and our editorials. We're also experts in climate coverage. We've got a great lifestyle section, personal technology section. So a lot of what I work on is thinking about like what kinds of audiences are we catering to on what kinds of topics. Somebody that's deep into our opinion section, they might be what we would think of as sort of a core Washington Post reader. They might be, primed to subscribe. They might already kind of know exactly what kind of value we deliver for their lives. If somebody's reading some of our food content or our travel content, they might not be ready to subscribe. They might not have sort of found the full Washington Post, but they're with us, they're reading. So we sort of think about in the time that we have somebody on our site, like what's the right message to reach the right person with? Is it an invitation to sign up for a newsletter, to download an app? Is it a subscription offer? If so, what offer should they get? It's an area of a lot of collaboration between us, our newsroom, our product team. One of the things that's nice is that in the news business, you often hear this idea of like church and state between the business and the news department. And in the time that I've been here, in 5 years, that is so much less a thing than it used to be. Our colleagues in the newsroom are super interested in being active collaborators in the subscriptions business, in learning what kinds of stories convert, what kinds of stories are good for leads, what kinds of stories are bringing in new audiences that traditionally haven't subscribed to the Post. So it's a great way for us as marketers to sort of lend our area of expertise to what they do so well, which is producing some of the world's best journalism.
Scott, my build on Chase would be, Joe, you can see Joe's wearing it right now. Our sort of call to action, like what guides us all, is this concept of democracy dies in darkness. And I think, to me, that's so inspiring. I think it's heavy too, in terms of like how we think about marketing on a day-to-day basis. I come from the streaming world, and basically in the streaming world, a lot of the recommendation engines, a lot of the content promotion, you sort of go down the echo chamber. And so it's like, if you watch a murder mystery, you're going to get 15 other murder mysteries. I think like one of the things that I think about and I sort of wrestle with, and I think like it goes to just the essence of democracy, is I don't think that's something we want. And so, maybe it's a unique challenge that, if all your reading is left-leaning or right-leaning, like to us, that's probably not a good outcome for society. Like it might be a good outcome for page views and some of these other things, but when we think about like, why are we in this business? We want to create a sustainable business because we want journalism to go on to infinity, so democracy can go on to infinity. So there's some of those nuances, being in this new role that I just never thought about before, but at least to me, and maybe it's just me, but are just so profound.
So to underscore that, one of the reasons why I love the Washington Post is that we are so mission driven. like democracy dies in darkness isn't just like under the masthead. It's, you know, something that we actually like believe in like on a day-to-day basis. And so balancing marketing principles with this idea that we want to be unbiased, delivering the news to people, we don't want to put our finger on the scale, is definitely something that we talk about. And I think that the route that we have chosen, which is taking a look at performance, using KPIs as a North Star, understanding what behavior actually means, and then running A/B tests to test these ideas, has given us a path to grow without harming our central mission, which is democracy dies in darkness.
That makes 100% sense. And actually, Chase, you said something that was interesting, and you reiterate, Michael, a little bit. And we often find this sort of in the role that I have here is content discovery. You want people to see new stuff and maybe things that they didn't even know they might like. And to your point, Michael, there could be a tendency to just zero in on the 4 topics that somebody really is into, but then they never sort of expand. And I'm curious how you think about that, and how your recommendations and what you show folks, how do you expand that a little bit?
I'll start, and then I don't know, Demi or Chase, you guys want to jump in because you're closer to this. So we, you know, it's nice having first party data. It's nice having zero party data because, and this direct relationship with our customer, because we know what the high value actions are. And, you know, to your point, it's easy to go down the sort of echo chamber of like, you like this, you're going to read this. You know, one thing that we found, and again, probably not terribly surprising, but diversity actually leads to better customer outcomes, meaning when someone reads more sections than say just politics, they're likely to stay longer and pay us longer. I think this, you know, to me, this was even sharper when I came on board because, you know, post 2020 or post 2021 in a like highly charged political environment, I think everybody wanted to exhale and wanted to sort of see other verticals outside of just politics. And, you know, we'd been doing this for a really long time. I mean, I didn't know when I first got here, but like you start to understand as you dive deeper of all the wonderful journalism that we do that isn't just say politics. You know, Chase mentioned climate and, you know, there's a host of others, but really having that, giving that kind of opening the door for us to do that and really lean into those and show, you know, people were more than just politics. And so that was kind of win-win, you know, great for us because it drives business metrics, but also great for, I think, customers because, hey, they were tired of politics, they needed a break, or, you know, COVID was too much. And so that, you know, that was a real win, at least, you know, from what I took away and what I can see thus far.
100%.
And I think Chase mentioned this. Oh, I said Chase mentioned this earlier, that there are certain, you know, we're able, and Joe mentioned this, you know, we're able to look to see what, there are certain types of content that are better for a certain user at their stage of the funnel. And so we run tests, we collect information to understand what works for that particular customer. Maybe they want to start with a politics, but what are they going to consume next? Maybe we can connect them with Post Reports, our podcast. Maybe we can connect them to our fact checker newsletter, kind of understanding their journeys a little bit better.
I think one of the things I would add that's really interesting about our business is that in the last couple of years, there's been so much of a focus on algorithmic curation, you know, in your Facebook newsfeed, in your Spotify recommendations, you know, as Mike said, in the video streaming world. And for us, we're an interesting case where for almost the entire time the Post has been around, our curation has come down to expert human editors that decide every day what's going to go on the top of the homepage in the paper, what's going to go on the top of the homepage on the website. And for many, many, many years, like that was the value proposition of a newspaper, that you had, you know, some of the world's leading experts on you know, how to cover the news, kind of deciding like these are the 10 things that are the most important in the world at this point. And now I feel like we're at this really interesting juncture where that is still as important as it always has been. But now we have we have so much more information to kind of like figure out, okay, so if someone's going to come into our homepage, they're going to see something that a human editor put there, but what's going to be their next step? What can we show them that that we covered that they didn't know that we did? So thinking about like how someone enters and then like what's the next read, what's the next ask? I think that's where there's a lot of dynamism in our industry right now.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, how many people? I'm sure you do consumer panels and tests. How many people see you just or primarily as a political news machine and sort of don't recognize all the other things that you do? I'm just curious if that brand perception is what I think it is, and is it changing?
So the answer, Scott, is it's exactly what you think. The very top line, people think of us as a political newspaper. From a Google perspective, Google thinks that we are a political newspaper. If you take a look at like our SEO, SEM efforts, we are in that bucket. But I think one of the opportunities that we have, especially with younger, more diverse audiences, is that it's a blank slate. Our surveys suggest that we have ample opportunity to change thoughts and minds about what is the Washington Post. Are we actually politics? I think right now politics is a dirty word, and it's something that people, especially young people, don't want to discuss online. Whether it's fear of siloing themselves or hampering career progress. I think having some sort of blank slate and brand opportunity with top of the funnel awareness will help shape these younger opinions.
Got it. And as you guys think about your social media, which I'm sort of taking a step back because, like I said in the beginning, you guys are a brand, you're a product, and I think some of the principles of marketing that you do can apply to just about anybody else on this phone. You're talking about data, you're talking about consumers, you're trying to understand what they're looking for and how to tailor the experience to be more enjoyable for them to engage more. I'm curious, I think this would be a Demi question about social media and how active a role it plays in engagement and how often you rotate messages around and how you decide the messages. I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, that's a great question and a great point. And social media is very important to us. Like Mike said, we do have a TikTok account. We are on all the major social media platforms and want to expand to even more and understand the next thing where people are consuming and talking about the news on. But we do, I guess in the paid space, we are looking to understand each different marketing touch point. And a news reader on Reddit might be different than a news reader on Facebook. And so we craft our campaigns and our messaging to make sense for them. And so the whole common themes, right? The data we're looking for, the KPIs we're measuring against are the same, but our tactics might be a little bit different depending on the platform and the demographic of the user there, where they're located, and what they're interested in. And what the conversation is. Like Twitter, every day there's a new topic, there's a new trend, depending on what's happening. And so how can we tap into that? And already we know we have great content. So how can we just get it out there farther and faster? And so we do a little bit of mix with both paid, unpaid, collaborating with our journalists to see if we can help, maybe there's a great offer we can provide, a loyal audience of a specific reporter. We're looking for ways to collaborate, and we do have a great team of collaborators at the Washington Post to do that.
And in this space, I do want to call out YouTube as part of social media. And I think that all marketers see opportunity with top of the funnel acquisition through video. Like video is such a very powerful tool. People love video and engagement rates are high. And so as Demi pointed out, our strategy isn't just confined to paid. We are actively thinking about organic acquisition and organic reach, specifically through our YouTube videos. And so we recently did an audit on the YouTube channel, And we found that if we were to decrease the number of videos that we publish to YouTube, it would give more eyeballs and more engagement to our brand focused videos. And what we saw was that engagement went up. The number of videos watched after the first contact also went up, and revenue also increased, both in ad revenue and downstream conversions with subscriptions. So I think this is a tactic that anybody can use outside of the news industry, because if you can create a great video that's 3 to 15 minutes long and you can post it on YouTube, that gives people ample amount of opportunity to follow the narrative in a space that it's only you and the viewer. I think it would be great for viewers to just like rethink how are they approaching YouTube and create more brand focused videos that really showcase the value of the brand.
God, I'd say Joe and Demi are underselling themselves a little bit. The amount of like content that we can potentially promote, or the decisioning that happens. We do 300 stories a day. That's not inclusive of videos, and that's not inclusive of platforms. I mean, they've gotten down basically to a science, I would say, how to promote, where to promote, all of these very sophisticated, questions that when you start to like, again, I've been unraveling the sweater here a little bit. I'm just like, how have you gotten to this point? It's amazing. I've just been so impressed, and I'm used to sort of doing it on the scale of maybe like 2 to 3 ads, and again, we're now operating at over 300-ish stories a day and decisioning off of that. So again, just a huge amount of volume, and has been discussed, like the news doesn't sleep, the news doesn't wait for you. We can't say at 1 a.m. no, we don't think it's we're asleep or something like that. So it's it's just really been impressive that the operation can operate at scale essentially 24/7.
Yeah, Joe, your point of, I think people often associate video with just this beautiful sort of branding. Did it change your outlook on what you might think about a product, 3 months from now? Would you buy it? But it sounds like from what you're saying, it actually can be used as a very tactical, like, I'm clicking through now, I'm engaged, I might actually, it's a lower funnel almost tactic, it feels like, the way you described it.
Yeah, so it's kind of both. But how we view it is from the customer angle. Like, to the customer, they don't know that they're bottom of the funnel. They don't know that that we're trying to influence brand perceptions. All they want to do is spend 2 to 3 minutes with the brand on YouTube and get something of value afterwards. And so for us, that is the mission and the KPI, and then everything else follows. But yeah, video does very well top of the funnel. We use it for bottom of the funnel conversions, especially when we have high impact brand spots that are dropping this year. We find that it is very compelling, and it gives more real estate and more information to people who are in the research phase of their customer journey. And so there's huge implications for expanding into video.
Makes me think, doesn't everybody kind of know who the Washington Post is? And are you at this point, are you trying, I'm trying to take audience isn't the right thing for me to say, but is it trying to, I guess, pull in somebody's attention maybe more to you from somewhere else? Like, everybody must know who you guys are.
About getting that future generation, like Mike Joe said.
Yeah.
We don't want to be your grandparents' newspaper. We want to be your kids and your future kids' newspaper.
Love it.
And that the work is never done there, I don't think.
That's a great point. My vision of the newsroom at the Washington Post comes from the movie All the President's Men, so I'm sure it's changed a massive amount since then. But do you find journalists to be somewhat competitive with each other, and they're always looking for an angle about how they can be a little bit better, maybe have more subscribers, maybe push out their Twitter channel a little bit bigger? I'm just curious what the inside scoop is on that.
So people at the Washington Post are very competitive.
In general.
In general, like even on this team, we love to win. yeah, there's competition in the newsroom, but we're also very driven by the brand. Democracy Dies in Darkness, it exists like outside of marketing in the newsroom. And we're not super far off from all the president's men. Like the same principles, the same philosophy and doctrine that guided the newsroom then guides it now. If I could offer like a different counterpoint, I think the central problem that we have at the Post, especially with younger folks, is that consuming news has changed, not the value of news. And you know, thinking about delivering newspapers, reading a newspaper is very easy to do. It comes to your door, you can read it, it's not tracking you. In digital, it's different. News is everywhere, and I think we are on a mission to communicate why people should choose the Washington Post, which is why it's important for us to restate our value, restate who we are, especially if people have this understanding of what we are. We do want to challenge that, and we do want to reframe it so we're not associated with, you know, fake news or free news that's on the internet. We are a step above because we have the process, we have the doctrine, and we have the process in the newsroom.
Yeah, and just to underscore that, I mean, it's not only about like, you know, why us? It's like, why should somebody pay for us? You know, there's so much content out there that's free. Some of it's great, some of it's not. And you know, we're sort of in the business of forming ideally long-term relationships with our readers. So you know, it's sort of like, you know, we need to challenge ourselves every day. Like, how are we proving our value to the people that subscribe to us, that come to us? You know, how are we offering something more than they could get for free in, you know, a news feed somewhere? And I think, you know, it's incumbent upon us never to sort of take for granted the trust that our readers and subscribers have found in us. That's something that we need to continue to work to earn every day that they're paying for us.
Yeah, it's almost like your work begins once they're inside, and how to keep them loyal and how to keep them coming back. I can see that.
Can I add? I think, you know, to me, I see everything in the terms of streaming just because it's where I've come from. But we're getting to a point where people are starting to have more than one subscription, and that's a behavior that people are getting more and more comfortable with. I think, and to your competitive, you know, point, I think we're learning that it's not zero sum in the sense like it's binary. There's either one provider or there's not. That was maybe the news industry before. I think now with the, you know, just digital subscriptions, people have very different needs, and no one publication, no one outlet is going to provide all of those needs. And so, you know, understanding where we fit in, how we fit in, you know, for some, we might be everything, or we might be, you know, one of two, you know, for someone else, we might be one of four. And I think, especially as you start to think of us now as a global organization, at least for the English speaking world, you know, it put things in perspective that we can win together. And I will say, definitely more so than the streaming industry, like there is a collaboration in this category that I hadn't seen before. People want other publishers to succeed, and can get behind that. And, you know, there's a sharing again that I haven't seen in other categories. And to me, that's really interesting.
Actually, I'm really curious how you guys come up with the price point for subscriptions. How does that get determined?
Chase.
Well, I mean, we look at a bunch of things. You know, as Mike said, we're a global organization. So we went through an exercise in the last couple of years of taking what had been longstanding domestic price points and figuring out, you know, what should our price be in Canadian dollars, what should it be in pounds, what should it be in euros. We are in India with a very competitive subscription price that is much different than what we offer here. So, I mean, it's sort of looking at the markets we're in. It's looking at the competitive set. You know, what are international competitors charging? What are domestic competitors charging? And then, you know, it's just keeping a super, you know, tight pulse on, you know, what is in the news cycle. You know, if there's a big moment, you know, maybe that's a time where we lower the price, we try to get more people in the door, we try to encourage more sampling. So, that's sort of like, it's a question that we're never going to solve. It's one of the things that we're, whatever the day of the week it is, you can bet that somebody is thinking about what we're going to test next with our pricing.
I know we only have a couple minutes left. Just more broadly, I'm curious from each of you how you would like to see what's going to happen this year. What's 2022 going to look like? How is your role going to change, if at all? Or how are you going to adopt to maybe a life post-COVID? Hopefully, knock on wood. Just curious how your roles will change. I'll start from the top to the bottom, just because it's in my screen. Chase, you get to go first.
2022 for us, we operationalized a lot of things in 2021, just from a team perspective. We learned to work together in new ways. We learned to work with other teams in new ways. We learned to really use the tools that we have on-site and off-site to get messages out more efficiently than we ever have before. 2022 is going to bring a lot of news opportunity with the midterms, et cetera. So I'm looking forward to us kind of expanding the collaboration that we built in 2021 and really using that to capitalize on what the news environment is going to bring organically in 22.
Nice. Demi?
Yeah, I think 2022, like these past couple of years have just taught me be ready for anything, right? And I think that's also a great part of our team and how the Washington Post works is we're very flexible, adaptable, and like everyone on the call had already said, we want to test, we want to experiment. And so more collaboration, more experimentation, and how can we go bigger? How can we serve more news to more people? And how do we think about that more strategically?
Yeah. Joe?
Measurement and attribution will be the biggest things on my plate this year. We are starting to expand to physical, out of home, direct mail, and creating a narrative that gives the right attribution to those top of the funnel initiatives will be very important. As I mentioned before, we are using a CDP, a customer data platform, debuting this year. And so just really getting into the weeds, understanding who is doing what, where are they doing it, and then tying it back to marketing, whether it's paid or organic or through product, creating walls or other touch points that draw people further down the funnel. Measurement is going to be it's going to be key for developing and growing.
Michael, I think I've left you with about 20 seconds, and then I think Joe's going to take over.
Yeah, and everyone took all the good stuff. What I would say is, so we've made a lot of investments internationally on the newsroom side. I think there is our lagging effect is like audience, visitors, and ultimately subscriptions. And so, really clarifying our role internationally and then growing our footprint internationally.
Fantastic. Thanks, everybody. Vito, I'll turn it back over to you. You're on mute. Mute.
Thanks, guys. Michael, Chase, Joe, Demi, and Mike, and Scott, we appreciate all the time. This was a fantastic conversation. I took so many nuggets out of this. Just looking at the whole measurement piece and looking at serving the customer with the right message on the right medium, where they digest their media is so super important. It's also about, creating that lifetime value that you want to continue that, throughout, so that you're, whoever's watching or supporting the Washington Post today, their kids will be supporting it moving onward. So it's really addressing that lifetime value. And then the whole democracy demise and darkness, that mission statement, it's epic. So thank you so much, guys. I'm going to, again, hope to see you again soon. And, thanks for that riveting conversation today. I'm going to now move it over to, we're going to go from the Washington Post. Bye, guys. We're going to go from the Washington Post to Lego. So I would like to introduce our next speakers, which is James Gregson, the creative director for digital at Lego. And they're going to be moderated by Nicole Muscatello, who's the regional vice president of sales at Undertone. We'll just wait a second for them to pop up.
Hi there.
Welcome, James and Nicole.
How are you? Thank you for that intro.
Oh, they are very welcome. I am intrigued. I'm ready for another great conversation here. We go from, from demise and democracy to Legos. So I love it.
Yeah,
What's more fun than Legos?
Exactly. Hard-hitting news to toys and entertainment. There we go.
Perfect.
I love it. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Brand Innovators, for having us. James, good to see you again.
You too.
I'm so excited to be here today, adding to so many of the insightful conversations that you all have already heard from marketers from John Hancock to the Washington Post to Waldorf Astoria on consumer engagement. We'll cover a variety of topics today, ranging from engaging consumers at all stages of the purchase funnel to inclusive marketing. And we'll have a few minutes for Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop it in that little widget, right, that you'll see at the bottom, so we can get to those. Before we jump in, I'll do some quick introductions. I am your moderator, Nicole Muscatello. I'm Regional Vice President of Sales at Undertone. Undertone creates memorable ad experiences across video, advanced TV, rich media, and social. We really bring together the art and science of intelligently crafted campaigns that will uplift consumers, brands, as well as publishers alike. Enough about us. I have an amazing guest lined up for you today. James Gregson, he is the creative director of digital at Lego. James brings a wealth of knowledge and over 15 years of senior leadership experience to this role. He previously was the head of social media studio at Lego, as well as the global senior team lead of digital channel engagement at Lego. So we're excited to learn more about your current role and dive into some of the exciting things that you're doing this year. So James, I'll let you kick it off. Tell us a little bit about your current role as creative director.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much. It's a mouthful when you share the background.
I had to practice a few times.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, so I've been at Lego now for 6 years. I started out as part of their digital channel engagement team that was really focused on adult communities. So everything from their high affinity fan networks to social media channels, all the way down to kids communities in the case of message boards on Lego.com and kids communities on our owned mobile apps. And then, yeah, transitioned into the more purely creative side, part of our internal creative agency. So yeah, I'm the creative director across all things in the Americas, and part of, as I said, part of our internal creative agency. So responsible for everything from product advertising to brand campaigns to internal communications campaigns. It really spreads across a number of different communication streams.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a big role, and what an exciting place to be in a creative space for someone, a brand like Lego.
It doesn't get better than this. Yeah. I peaked early, for better or for worse. Yeah, the running line is the eight-year-old version of me does not appreciate the job that I have, nor does my 4-year-old for that matter. So maybe either of us will.
Well, Lego is such an iconic brand. It started as really just a toy that you would buy for your kids, but has quickly evolved, especially during the pandemic, so much more, and is sought out, strictly by adults now. So how has your creative and marketing strategy, over the past couple of years evolved to now engage those consumers of all ages?
Yeah, there's the famous sort of social meme or ad around there that Lego is, for 99 plus, right, on the box, the packaging. We have our age recommendations, but we really do believe that as a brand, we've always believed that our products are for everybody. I think on the flip side of that can make marketing and creative extremely challenging because we have such a broad net that we're trying to reach and trying to cast. But on the flip side, I think a lot of credit has to go to our CMO, who identified, and prioritized adults as a priority audience and a priority focus for the business I think probably about 3 or 4 years ago. Now we had always had adult fans, AFOLs, adult fans of Lego are a real thing. They have fan conventions, they have local community meetups, they create amazing content on social, but we've never specifically and proactively marketed it to them. And ever since they were identified as a priority audience, you may notice that small things like the amount of expensive products that we have on our shelf have increased, right? The amount of large scale, huge sets that we have on sale has increased, right? That's specifically directed at that adult consumer. Everything from what the recent AT-AT to the, I think it's like a 4-foot Titanic model. Those are not bought with the 8-year-old consumer in mind. Those are marketed and created with the adult consumer in mind. So it's been an exciting opportunity. I think it's also been a sort of fairly serendipitous one, because as I think we all felt it the last 2 years, those of us maybe who maybe I can say this because I'm a parent, we're lucky enough not to be parents through the last 2 years of COVID, found themselves with a lot more time in their hands. And we gained a huge number of adult audiences through the last 2 years.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, there's only so many hours you can spend in front of the TV, and how can you take your kids away from the learning experience and so much more that they get from Legos versus, just consuming content all day long.
Yes.
Really cool. So an interesting space for you as the creative director with a brand that has so much brand awareness and continues to grow and, broaden your audience reach. I was actually reading an article earlier today from Architectural Digest from December 2021, and it said that Legos might be a better investment than stocks, bonds, and gold because of how much the rapid growth you guys have had and the demand for these discontinued sets. So how are you constantly pushing the boundaries and getting creative to, keep these audiences loyal and evoke change to bring them further down the funnel time and time again?
It's a great question, and one that we are constantly challenging ourselves with. I think at the same time as well, there were many far smarter people before me, decades and decades and decades before me, that established this brand to be what it is today. And it is part of on us to not screw it up, quite frankly. But at the same time also, I think, we want to be more than just a toy brand. We want to be more than just, an entertainment brand with our movies and our TV content. I think we really do believe in this idea of being an experience brand, much in the same way that Apple does. And you want that same, sort of Lego brand experience to be felt through, from when you open up one of our sets to when you visit a store to when you download one of our apps. So it's a lot of iterating on that sort of that user journey and that evolution to a user journey, and a lot of a balancing act between digital and physical. We are very much a physical toy, and we cannot lose sight of that, even in the face of digital everything. It is a constant challenge for sure, but an exciting one.
Yeah, exciting. I mean, for sure, of course, as kind of the digital evolution has come over the past few years, I'm sure there was a moment when, as the physical kind of touch of a Legos, you have to think about ways to still engage those consumers, even if the set's not sitting in front of them.
Yeah, correct. I think the most important thing is that you've got to we really try and, focus on the brick. We have one sort of key strategic sort of principle across everything that we do, regardless of what department you're in, and that's to inspire builders of tomorrow. So that obviously that can be done in a number of different ways. I think for us, obviously the ideal scenario is with physical building, but whether if that's through an AR or VR experience, for which we have a couple around in various platforms, that's also fine as well.
Awesome. Yeah. So going back to what you were saying about kind of building and expanding your audience, there's been an increased focus and a lens on inclusive marketing efforts. So how have you addressed that over the past few years, and how is Lego making sure they're showing up in an authentic way with consumers?
Yeah, great question, a really important question for us. I think there's a number of different ways. It doesn't take a killer detective to look and search and see that we've got pink bricks, right, and an entire product line that's dedicated with pink and purple bricks. Yes, those products are marketed in a certain way, but anyone can build with them. Many people do build with them. We have adult fans that build with them and rebuild, crazy R2D2 models in sort of re-envision ways. So I think, at a core, for the most part, our minifigures and our characters are yellow, right? So they're their own sort of race in of themselves, and that's also by design. I expect that to potentially change down the road. Yes, we have skin colored minifigures based on actors and things of that nature. I think our marketing is supposed to be inclusive, and will be even more inclusive as we sort of look to better encompass what the world looks like. We recently just piloted, a Latinx creative campaign as a pilot, something that we've never done before, which was targeting a specific audience that had maybe had a certain opinion of Lego as this high-end, too expensive product. Now, while we have expensive products, certainly we also have a lot of low-end inexpensive products to support that price point. So we've sort of reintroduced or attempted to reintroduce our brand to that audience. And the early reads are that's been super successful. So I hope we continue along that path and continue to reach new audiences in different ways. And get the brand out there, because I do believe there is no better brand that supports this sort of idea of creative problem solving, which is a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah, that's awesome and exciting to kind of, put those strategies at the forefront. So
Yeah.
how are you using data to inform, the decisions you're making, specifically in that kind of for your inclusive marketing efforts?
Yeah, I think so. As I said, so our Latinx campaign was a pilot. It was a true test and learn. We only ran it in, I believe, 5 to 6 key markets in the U.S. Content was delivered in Spanish, and we'll look to scale that launched end of last year, and we'll look to reignite that and expand it to more markets. So we are sort of certainly looking at a data first approach to a lot of things. I mean, my background is in social, both from the channel management side as well as the creative side, where we data informed everything that we did, right? So we would know within the first 60 seconds if we posted something on Instagram or Facebook, whether it's going to perform well or not, which is a crazy place to play, considering how much effort it probably took to create the asset. But you really had to start looking at as less as a brand and more as a publisher or a creator. And yeah, that's why that creator space is such a fascinating space right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, social, it's the fastest way to get information in front of people. And especially in this crazy, our current events are changing by the second. So a lot of brands are doubling down on this kind of reactive marketing or kind of real-time marketing to engage their consumers. But like you said, in the matter of 5 seconds, you'll know whether this is working. So do you believe in these strategies? Do you think this is a successful way to engage your consumer and build that long-term kind of equity you're looking for, and what would your advice be to other marketers who are testing this out?
It's a controversial question because we as a brand are, I wouldn't say committed to it, but we are definitely active in it. Everyone knows the Wordle craze, and congrats to Mr. Wordle who sold that to the New York Times. Great story. But when Wordle first reached peak, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, we as a brand decided to create some content about it. And, I think even Adweek featured that content. And I think that's a wonderful example of at least involving your brand in a way that you hope that makes sense and raises some level of brand awareness. But at the same time, I think that strategy it's challenging for a number of reasons. One is it's challenging because it takes a lot of focus and a lot of time and effort to stay on top of trends. Two, I'm just not sure the ROI is there anymore. Now I know the fast food vertical would disagree with me, where a lot of their their marketing efforts go to this sort of trend and cultural piece. And while cultural marketing should be really, really important, I do wonder in this day and age with so many different channels, with the sort of overall efficacy and value of social to brands potentially in decline, with all the changes to on the digital side. I wonder, I don't know. I see a lot of heated debates on LinkedIn and a lot of interesting debates on Twitter, but it's definitely a finer line than maybe we've ever had before in years past.
Yeah, and on that kind of efficacy of social, where do you see us moving? What changes do you think are going to come up in the next year or so?
Ooh, yeah, I mean, you've already seen it, right? I think, I don't want to say the value of the influencer because that makes it sound like what we were talking about, years ago. I think the creator space, and what the likes of TikTok has done for the creator space is really, really interesting. You look at these sort of brand partnerships, everything from Hugo Boss working and using a famous TikTok influencer as the face of their new campaign, to Gucci and North Face using a train spotting influencer on TikTok. I think that to me is the most interesting place to play, and doing it in a right way. I'll always use the sort of Casey Neistat and Samsung example as the marquee way to marry a brand and an influencer, and less look about them as influencers and more as creators, because they're going to do things for you that you as a brand might not be able to do. Certainly you wouldn't be able to do for the cost that they will be able to do it. So that's where I'd love the place to go. I'm really loving these brand partnerships. We've done some awesome ones. The Adidas partnership, I think was a really great fun one. We've done a partnership with IKEA, but as I said, I think that's a really, really fun place for brands to get involved. And then this creator space, which is just ripe with just amazing content.
Yeah, it's exciting. So with your background in social, how, and now kind of more pivoting into this, touching all channels from a creative standpoint, how did you navigate those new mediums, and what advice do you have for marketers who are making that jump as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'd lie if I didn't think if I didn't say there was a little bit of imposter syndrome there. For sure there was. That's real. I think, listen, would I be at the forefront of a print campaign? Probably not. We have better people that are skilled for that. At the same time, I truly believe that I understand the value of. I understand how to tell a story on behalf of a brand, and what that looks like in various forms. I don't see a print ad being as different as an Instagram post. I see them quite simple. It all goes back to, how are you going to grab attention, and how are you going to keep that attention, and what's the action or emotion you're trying to incite. So, the fundamentals are still the same. It's just a little different.
Yeah, interesting. So on the point of attention and kind of that emotion, how are you measuring those two metrics with your consumers?
Ooh, yeah. Measurement is a good one. Coming from a very large, highly matrix organization like Lego, listen, matrix get twisted and manipulated and translated in a way that the deliverer of said information wants. And I think that is a challenge, right? Because you never know what good looks like and what bad looks like. I always say to my team, don't give me numbers in a vacuum. Give me comparative percentages, and I'll tell you if that's good or bad, or that will tell you if it's good or bad. Right? But we still hear it, right? I still hear things like, oh, that our OLV on YouTube got 3 million views. I'm like, well, what's our media budget? $3 million? Because if it was, no, that sort of thing. Because if it was, then maybe the content sucked. So I think it's about being very laser focused about what the objective of that campaign or of that individual asset or tactic is supposed to deliver on, and then know a singular and maybe one primary KPI and one secondary KPI, and then having benchmarks, right? And the amount of excuses I always hear about benchmarks is, well, it's not an apple to apples comparison. And I get it. There are different audiences and different objectives, but without the benchmark, there's no way to compare performance. So I'm very strict about that sort of stuff. I hate going into sort of creative reviews with my boss without those sort of benchmark data. Even if they're very general, we need to know what good looks like and what bad looks like.
Awesome. So internally this year, what are you most excited about on the horizon for Lego internally?
Ooh, what am I most excited about? Well, we've got a lot of, we always have, super exciting products to launch. So that makes our job very easy. I'll look at last year, my probably product highlight would be the home loan set. I'm actually building it right now. And that makes our job incredibly fun, right? When I'm excited to share a product announcement, I know I've got the right job and I know I'm at the right place. But at the same time, I think I'm really excited about, some potential creative opportunities as it relates to, retention, right? So how do we retain these new adult customers that we've got, under our umbrella now? What does that look like? How do we go after smaller, more niche audiences? Like, do we come up with an opportunity for grandparents, who, have every right to be Lego fans as much as kids do? So those sort of, I think, incremental opportunities on top of the work that we'll do. I'm really excited to see if they can come to fruition.
That's awesome. On the topic of retention, there's another way to look at this too, is the competition that exists within your space. So
yes,
what are some ways that you guys are constantly kind of thinking ahead and also, I would say, responding to some of the other brands that are coming into the space and coming after Lego?
Yeah. Well, I think, we do we try to our best to separate ourselves from, the competition in that sense. We don't really feel like we've got competitors, but at the same time, I think I look at our competitors as the whole digital ecosystem, right? Whether it's YouTube, whether it's video games, anything that's taking away the attention of a potential builder, I see as a competitor. But I'll always flip that pancake and say, as a parent, although not as a parent of avid Lego builders yet, I always say, I'm so lucky to work for a brand where, no parent that I know of has ever said to their kid, stop playing with Lego. Whereas I could have a laundry list of things where I tell my kids to stop doing. So I think that's that is our key differentiator. I think we need to elevate that message and keep that message at the forefront, especially in this sort of world of digitization where kids are glued to their phones, glued to their iPads, glued to their TVs, whatever it may be. We want to really celebrate that while we have digital experiences, the core value proposition is a physical building experience that isn't digital.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's super important now more than ever,
Yes.
as we're glued to our computers and phones almost 24/7. But the industry, in general is moving more digital. You mentioned, the introduction of AR and VR and some of the things that you're doing. There's a huge craze happening with the metaverse and, so many brands entering that space. How are you guys dipping your toes in, and are you looking to expand in those areas?
I can't share too much on that outside of it's very rare that we as a brand will be first to do something, and that's by design. From a personal standpoint, listen, I think the metaverse is for Lego potentially very interesting. Obviously, Roblox has done a great job in that space and really sort of built out something. I think with our sort of partnership with Minecraft and sort of our product experience with Minecraft, obviously there's a huge opportunity with that. Personally, I'm more excited about what Lego and NFTs could look like. I think that's a really exciting opportunity, but you will have to watch that space. I can't share more than that.
Yeah, NFTs. I mean, it's the kind of antithesis of Lego right now. The non-physical item to what you guys have built your brand on is getting those Legos into hands. But that's exciting. Yeah. I'm excited to see where you guys continue to explore in that area.
Yeah, listen, it's a fascinating space. It's I personally think it's ripe for a potential dip in popularity, but it's still established enough now at this point where it will have a life for many years to come. It's just where and how it will be interesting to see.
Awesome. And then going back to that one thing you said in terms of kind of like, helping kids, I think it was like push the brand forward and, create that experience and as a learning. How do you really, use creative to root that in your purpose and communicate that to your consumers so they think of that when, they're shopping for their children in the store or maybe even themselves?
Yeah, I mean, that is, again, it's one of the key value propositions of our product, right? Is that, it is a small toy, that, yes, there are, we have a category of consumers that we call build and display, right? Which for some parents is the worst nightmare, right? It's, 4 hours worth of very peaceful, quiet entertainment for a kid, but then it just sits in the shelf and collects dust. But listen, I am one of those builders, but as a kid, I was not. And, we have an entire brand campaign that is principled on this idea of building and rebuilding, right? And it's called, the tagline is Rebuild the World. And it's based on this insight, right? That, parents and consumers see a lot of our products as this build and display, but years past the product was build, rebuild, unbuild, build again, and it had this much longer life cycle, and we really believe in that. Personally, I think it's a fantastic place to be because it doesn't necessarily support commercial momentum. That's how strongly we believe in that sort of that value proposition of our product.
And the idea of rebuilding the world, do you think this has taken a different shape over the past 2 years with everything going on with the pandemic and so many other topics?
Well, I do ask the question myself sometimes of like, if we could see the future, would we have used the same terminology? But at the end of the day, yes, I think we would have. We are a brand that is playful at heart, and if we want serious undertones, if someone wants to use Lego to deliver a serious message, I'm all for that. It's a wonderful product for storytelling, in whatever format, whether that be stop motion, whether that be through, audio or visual, there's a number of ways to do that. So I think, yes, obviously, we live in a very different time than before this campaign landed, but at the same time, I think we still have the same responsibility as we did before, which was to, inspire the builders of tomorrow, and maybe we inspire them to, cure COVID once and for all, versus inspire them to build a set they never thought they could build.
Awesome. I love it. And when you're creating these messages and you look for partners to help you distribute this, what are some of the criteria that you kind of, determine when deciding, whose platform to use to get this in front of your consumers?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think we worked very closely with our media agency on that front. I think from a creative standpoint, we have maybe a sort of different approach than most internal agencies do. We very much believe in this notion of know what we know, and most importantly, know what we don't know, right? So in the case of our Latinx campaign, while my co-creative director is Colombian, he's one person, and he's not going to shape the entire campaign. So we wanted this to be authentic. We wanted this to come across authentically and really work. So probably wasn't a good idea to have a bunch of creatives who are American by descent or European by descent and not Hispanic. So we partnered with Casanova, a McCann agency that specializes in Latinx creative campaigns, and sort of married our brand stewardship and our understanding of what you can do with a Lego brick and what you can't do with a Lego brick, and that list is long, with an agency that knows storytelling to that Latinx community, right? So everything from combining our strategists on the Lego side to understand our audience and the Lego audience and the sort of business challenges, all the way through to co-producing the TV spot, the radio spot, the social assets. So I think it was a really interesting future look at the way that we potentially want to do business, right? Because we can't just hire on different skill sets for smaller projects. We didn't know, say, for example, that Latinx was going to work. It's very much about that test and learn, and it enables us to bring in world-class partners to deliver world-class content.
And this test and learn environment, is this something that has been built into your strategy so you can be more nimble?
Yes.
And find new ways to engage your consumers? And how important do you think that is for brands to adopt that same strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can, the term gets thrown around a lot for sure. And I think it's a good term that gets used as an excuse to do something. I think, when we do it, we're doing it from the case of we want these programs to get funded right into the long term. So we are very, very focused on what are we trying to answer and what are we trying to see from a performance standpoint, so that if it works, there's a very clear understanding of if it worked, and if it didn't work, we all understand that it didn't work. So yeah, I think yes, it's a wonderful way to not obviously put all your eggs in one basket, but also use it transparently and not as an excuse to try something new and not involve a bunch of people.
Yeah. Awesome. So you've been at Lego for 6 years now. What advice would you have now for yourself 6 years ago when you first started? And what do you think is, I'll let you answer that question first, then I'll get to my second part.
Be patient. I joined Lego after running my own business for 5 years, which was probably honestly the worst thing I could have done, because I was responsible for everything, from invoicing to copywriting to development of a website, for example, all the way through to, and now at Lego, obviously I'm a cog of a very big machine that moves without me. I think patience would be the number one thing that I would have probably told myself before. I still tell it to myself.
Yeah, I mean, it's great advice, and I need to tell myself that every day as well, in not only work environments, but every facet of life.
Yeah.
So over those 6 years, what do you think is one of the key skill sets that you've taken away and really embody now that you would give advice to other marketers who are looking to be in your shoes one day?
So one thing that I really believe in is this idea of your sort of expertise T. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but basically this idea that have broad experience and really don't specialize too far, right? So the the length of your T, but have a wide enough T that you have experience in a bunch of different things. I think that is really, really something that I believe in. I used to have performance marketing report into me when I was part of our digital channel engagement team, right? And that's not because it was given to me. That's because I wanted it, because I believed the value of what that could do for our communities. So all the way through to creating TV campaigns right now. Also surround yourself with people, their expertise in those categories. But I really buy into this notion of having a broad enough experience in different categories, but not so broad that you can't specialize in something or be a specialist in one thing that you're ultimately responsible for. So yeah, that's what I tell a lot of mentors or mentees that I work with today.
Yeah, it's great advice, and it's been very successful for you. So congratulations so far. One of the Q&As that I have coming through is more of a fun one. So what is your favorite Lego partnership and set of all time?
Oh man, I mean, I'm hard pressed. Home Alone's my favorite Christmas movie, right? And it's not January anymore, so I can't really even talk about Christmas in February now. But yeah, I'd have to say the Home Alone set is maybe my favorite. It's just such a good movie, and I had every intention to watch the movie and build it at the same time, but I have 3 kids under 4, and there's no time. So
I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, James. It was great chatting with you today and learning more about the brand and your successes. It is truly inspiring.
Thanks so much.
Best of luck.
Yes, thanks so much, everyone. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn at JLWGreg or on Twitter at JLWGreg as well.
Nicole and James, thank you so much. I can't wait to see how Lego is going to address NFTs. That kind of can be some real creative genius there. And again, James, thanks for that advice on being a little bit more of a generalist versus specialist and kind of creating a wide T. So you kind of broaden your experiences for all those mentees out there. I would, again, like to thank you for, again, a riveting conversation, and I would hope to see you guys back soon. And with that, I'm going to move it over to our last session with Sonia Sethi. Thanks, guys. Director e-commerce and omnichannel at Mars Pet Care, US Mars Banfield Pet Hospital. And the moderator, Fabiana Daddario, Senior Client Success Analyst at SimilarWeb. Welcome. Hi, Fabiana. Hi, Sonia.
How's it going?
Very, very good. How are you guys?
Doing well. Thanks for having us.
Very well.
Absolutely. We're intrigued by the next conversation for pet care. I think one of the things we all love is our pets. It's one of those recession-proof industries. No matter what, you always buy something for your pet or you're taking care of your pet. So it'd be interesting. I'm going to be intrigued by the conversation today. So with that, I'll let you take it away, Fabiana.
Wonderful. Once again, thanks for having us. We're super excited to be here. To give a brief background to myself, my name is Fabiana. I'm a Senior Client Success Analyst at SimilarWeb. Also get into a little bit more about what SimilarWeb does. Essentially, my day-to-day involves helping my clients succeed. So SimilarWeb is a market intelligence platform, and we measure the digital world. We really track how consumers are navigating the web at scale. And so my job is to help customers and brands succeed, really understand how they're performing compared to their industry, to their market competitively, and find opportunities for them to succeed. So that's a little bit about me and my day-to-day, and I'll hand it on over to Sonia to introduce herself.
Yeah, absolutely. But first of all, thank you, Vito, and hey, Fabiana, great to see you again. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here today and looking forward to our discussion. I am a consumer marketer. My passion really lies at that intersection of consumer and digital. I started my career at Colgate-Palmolive, a fantastic company with great leadership and iconic brands. And that's really where I built my foundation in terms of how to grow brands and businesses. I am a curious person by nature and love the digital and e-commerce space. And that then, led me to the Nature's Bounty company, where I was heading up e-commerce for their vitamins and health supplements business. After which I joined Mars, which is where I am now. Mars is a beautiful, purpose-led, values-driven family business. And I have the chance of working in Mars Pet Care, which is its biggest business segment. And within Mars Pet Care, I work at Banfield Pet Hospital. And Banfield is America's largest provider of general veterinary services. And it's truly a business with a beating heart. I think of it that way. It has over 1,000 hospitals across the country, 20,000 associates, many of who are veterinarians. And, if any of our listeners have been in a pet hospital and you've seen what happens there, it's no easy job. And for many in the field or in the hospital, this is really, a calling or a vocation with real purpose. So in my day-to-day, I have the honor of working alongside some very dedicated professionals and really seeing compassion in action every day. So that's a little bit about myself and what I do.
I think we can all attest to those of us that are pet parents, that definitely our pets are our lives. So very thankful for all of the professionals out there, helping our pets stay healthy and safe and live thriving lives. Absolutely. I'm lucky to have my 15-year-old dog, Fraser, still alive and kicking, which is really special. And so I definitely have a lot of respect for those in the field as well. Personally, for me, we definitely saw massive growth to the pet care industry in COVID. I think we all kind of have seen, whether it's yourself or friends or family, have new pets join their homes and their lives. We definitely saw that here at SimilarWeb from the digital measurement side. So just tremendous growth across the pet care industry. And now I kind of joke that I feel like I'm a bit of a pet care expert because it brought a lot of it shed a lot of light on what's happening in the industry, and some of the connections I was having with our customers and clients. And the concept that we always go back to is being a pet parent. And I love this phrase. I think also pet parents love this phrase, adds that legitimacy there. But Sonia, would love to hear, what happened in COVID from your perspective, what you saw happening in the industry, and what were even some of the things that were super surprising?
Yeah, COVID has changed all of our lives, my goodness. And for so many of us, it's brought to light feelings of isolation, the need for companionship, for comfort. So it's really no surprise, just as you said, Fabiana, that so many people became new pet parents during the pandemic. And I was reading this new ASPCA research that was just released, and it said, since the start of the pandemic, 1 in 5 US households have adopted a pet. That's some 23 million households in the United States. The number is staggering. And what you were saying is really about the human-animal bond. It's stronger than ever today. And I was reading this other research, and it was an interview with pandemic pet parents, and it said, over 90% of people wholeheartedly agree that their pets during the pandemic have improved their own wellness, physical, mental, emotional, and that's only positive news. What's really interesting, as we talk about the pandemic, given where we are now, the pandemic, a number of people are, making a transition going back to the office. That is also having a big impact on pet parents and pets. Pet anxiety is the number one issue that pet parents talk about. Now, as parents who have been working from home for 2 years and making their way back to the office, what does that mean for pets? It has big implications, right? And that's where so much research has been done, and we found workplaces that are inclusive and that are pet friendly see a direct improvement in associate wellness and in positive, joyful work culture. So that's been a really, really interesting insight as well. And if there are any employers listening in or watching in, it's something to really consider, making your workplace pet friendly. But yeah, COVID has had a massive impact on the pet space in terms of pet adoptions, growth in pet care, and now what we're seeing in terms of the impact on, how we think about the workplace of the future as well.
Yes, I definitely don't mind having extra furry friends at work. Tomorrow, we have yet to officially go back into the office, but I've been by choice going into the office for, a year and a half now. So I feel like I was like the weird person that only was out of the office for like 3 months. And I was like, get me back in. But it's definitely been really fun coming back into the office, experiencing a sweet furry friend here and there. But in terms of that anxiety, I definitely am hearing it with even, my close friend circles at a dinner party.
Yeah.
And then it's funny because we're seeing it from the perspective of consumer search behavior. So something in Silverado, being able to understand, what are pet parents searching around pet anxiety?
Yeah.
And then just seeing the tremendous growth, like the search volume for all these different anxiety related terms. So very concerned parents, pet parents, wanting to offer the best for their COVID animals that have grown up in a very, very different world than those prior to. Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of, were there any other insightful like pet discoveries that you found on your end? I mean, like for me, just really interesting to see that not only from like a retailer perspective of the Chewy, Petco, PetSmarts of the world, seeing massive increases, but then seeing pet adoption sites, massive increases. And then even for more, the pet food industry has just absolutely blown up, like can't even reach demand to support now this 1 in every 5 households. Anything else that was just kind of shocking, surprising during this time that you've seen?
There are a few things that have all come up, and it all stems to that core insight of, pet parenting is about unconditional love. And like you rightly pointed out, right? Now more than ever, with the growth in number of pet parents, we will do anything we possibly can to give our pets the longest, healthiest life possible. And that is the driver of all of the growth that we're seeing. And there's some big core macro trends. One is really, and this is insightful, is really the humanization of pet care. When you think about, you mentioned pet food, just take that category, for example, right? 5-6 years back, it was really all about the kibble. But now when you look at the food space, it's about fresh food. It's about the farmer's dog. It's about frozen food and refrigerated food. When you look at younger pet parents, the younger millennials, or Zoomers, Gen Z, there is this growing trend of home cooking for my pet because it's good for their health and it'll help them live longer. So the humanization of pet care is a massive trend that we're seeing. I think the second thing that is also growing very quickly is this whole idea of holistic health. Beyond just pharmaceuticals, what else can I do for my dog or my cat, my pet, to help them live the best life possible? And the one surprising thing for me coming into animal health was actually seeing how far behind animal health is to human health. In terms of advancement, I would venture to say we're at least 15 years behind, if not more. But now with the growth in the number of people adopting pets, there is a need for more accessible animal health in terms of cost, availability, proximity of care. And it's been really encouraging to see so much work in that area and the advancement in animal health. And I think that's where digital innovation could play a really big role in making pet care and animal health more accessible to pet parents.
Absolutely. I love that point about, digital transformation. I think especially within the more, traditional CPG realm, and those are the customers that I'm interfacing with every day. And I really love what Silverado can do for those in the CPG space. And I'll talk about that momentarily. But in terms of CPG companies, I feel like they feel that they have to make really big strides and really, significant advancements in a short period of time to kind of keep up with, some players that are, let's say, more like digitally native, like you mentioned, a farmer's dog or D2C subscription focused. That's something also we'll be talking about a bit later. So what do you think are some of the biggest areas of opportunity for pet care and digital transformation? Like, what does that intersect look like? Or what are some of the things that you've seen maybe just in the past year or 2 years that are really exciting to you personally, Sonia?
You know, for me, as I think about digital transformation, for me personally, what made this space really exciting is that it is so dynamic, it is always changing. So for those of us who are ongoing learners, from a personal growth standpoint, it's a terrific space to be in. You know, when I think about digital transformation, and you mentioned CPGs, I will say it is a buzzword in our industry. It really is. And when a lot of people talk about digital transformation, they are referring to marketing and sales and the demand generation part of it alone. But to me, that's not only it, that's the level up. For true digital transformation to happen, every single part of the enterprise that impacts the customer experience needs to be digitized and transformed to enable that best customer experience. And I think that's the opportunity really for CPGs to think through it from that lens. If you think about digital transformation, supply chain is really a cornerstone. If supply chain is not built to deliver on that, the front end can only do so much. And as you think about R&D and product innovation, especially for companies that are fundamentally manufacturers, are we thinking about the digital consumer as we think about our recipes, our formulations? Internal IT is obvious. Finance is a really important one because with digital transformation comes the birth of new businesses. Are we looking at financials with a lens that actually allows nascent businesses and gives them the chance to grow and flourish? That takes time to scale, right? HR is incredibly important. A lot of these companies are out there really trying to acquire digital talent, but what about retention? That's where it gets more challenging. Do we have the strategies to keep them there? And I really do think all of these elements need to work together in order for marketing and sales to be successful, to drive that demand with digital. You know, with digital transformation from a leadership standpoint, what I have found is it's really important to be clear on the why of why we're doing it, and then as a leader, be able to really work across functional lines to drive that change that is needed. In animal health, I think we have seen so much. It is really exciting. You talked about, you know, digital native and in search and brands. There is massive growth here. And I think what a lot of these companies do really well is, and brands do really well, is that agility of entering markets quickly and understanding what the consumers want and delivering on that. There is tremendous opportunity in pet care with digital transformation. And I think it's not just in terms of the products that we offer, it's also how we offer them, the education that pet parents are seeking, and you know, the services and how the experience is delivered is a huge opportunity as well as we think about digital transformation.
I think that brings up such a great point. In my head, the first thing that popped in, it takes a village, right? It can't just come from one part of the org. You know, you hope that it is coming from leadership, and it's more of, this is what we're embarking on together to kind of motivate that cross-functioning, you know, collaboration.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, what's been really interesting is the beauty about SimilarWeb is we can see how consumers are navigating the web at scale. If you think of, you know, imagine having the Google Analytics type data on every website in the world, right? There's so many use cases. There's so many customers we serve. That's what makes my job amazing and super, you know, gives me a lot of gratification. Mm-hmm. I think what's really interesting is the different, like looking at it from different perspectives and what someone can bring to the table from, let's say, a traditional CPG company. So I think the reason why I love working with CPGs is primarily because I think we have a really strong use case around understanding how you're performing on your partner retailers. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I think a lot of people on the call could probably agree, if they're in that space, that when you're dealing with your partners, your e-com partners, you know, you have a middleman, and it's kind of like a frenemy situation in a sense. You're really grateful, you have this relationship, but there's a lack of consistency and transparency of performance. You know, understanding how you're playing against your category or your competitors. So SimilarWeb kind of like lifts up that hood of, I've known how I've been performing on XYZ partners. Yeah. Now I've got the context of how I'm performing against my competitors. And so that's, the core, which I get a lot of, I have so much fun at work every day, getting to interact with all of these different brands and talking about the problems that they face and the relief that they get when they realize for the first time ever in their careers, oh my gosh, I can actually contextualize this performance for once. And then it's really interesting because very traditional CPG, you have that pushing to the middleman, but you have a brand.com and there's a lot of investment, especially from a digital transformation perspective. Companies want some of that they want more first party data. They want to understand who their consumer is for. How do we, how do we become part of the kind of consideration set, and how does this influence the consumer journey ultimately? So even being able to understand brand.com performance, lacking that conversion element is still super influential. And that's also, an area we can deep dive into. And then lastly, what I'm seeing more recently is the D2C focus. So a lot of CPG companies say, well, we don't need the middleman always. Like, we need those relationships. Those are long lasting. Those are our bread and butter. But let's also try to be digitally native with some of our brands, and compete against, some of these brands that have popped up and have just, captured massive market share. So that's been really interesting for me too, having more of those conversations in the past year or 2 years, definitely more of that head to head competitive ones.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, just was curious to see where in terms of sorry, I think another point I really wanted to go down is that with digital transformation, everyone needs to kind of be informed all of the time. And I think that's what was something very interesting about COVID that accelerated, Similarweb's business, but obviously the business of a lot of other players in the digital space is not relying on traditional market research or tools that would be a little bit too late to the game before you can really enact on that. So I think that's just one of the many things that have just evolutionized our business in a short period of time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you bring up really good points on D2C. And frankly, you talked about the digital insurgent brands that are coming in. The threat is real. The threat really, really is real. And these are brands that, really know how to talk to consumers, because consumers' expectations of that value equation from brands have changed. It's less about mindless consumption. It's about actually knowing where my money is going, investing in brands that are doing more than just making a profit, that are supporting our greater world and sustainability. And D2C, a lot of these insurgent brands do a fantastic job with their storytelling, really connecting with consumers, using that first party data to understand consumers, engage them, and building a relationship based on that, acting with speed and agility to innovate and enter new markets and new categories. And you're right, they're absolutely taking share from a lot of the big players. The scary thing with a lot of the big CPGs and companies is that they may not even be measuring the growth of these little brands. You aren't noticing them until they've actually gone from infants to teenagers, and that's danger right there. So to your point, Fabiana, I think the time is now when we can't keep debating, should we do D2C or not? The question is, how do we do it right? And, having a few themes come up as I think about my experience with D2C. Number one is the importance of a value proposition to the consumer. It's got to be differentiated. It's got to be meaningful. And it's got to give a real clear why buy in terms of changing behavior. Why come to this site and give it traffic and log into something completely new? The other thing, when I've done D2C and CPGs, I've seen that when it really works, there is very clear alignment up, down, and across the organization on the why. Why are we doing this? Is it just a test and learn? Hopefully it's not. Are we doing it to get data? Because now more than ever, every company needs to be thinking about zero and first party data. Or is this a new incremental revenue stream? And are we going to invest behind it and give it that level of focus? It's when there's that alignment, I have found that D2C tends to be more successful because we're enabling it to be. D2C, I think, is a really important space. And I'm really glad you brought up that question. In the pet care space, we're seeing so many D2C businesses blossom. And it's exciting to see that kind of activity, all in service of what we talked about. It's that pet parent human animal bond, doing the best we can. People are willing to experiment to give their pets the best products and services possible to give them a long, healthy life.
I could not agree more. What do you find, is just a critical, where should the critical focus be on digital transformation today? Do you think it starts more, I know you have mentioning first party data, does it rely on that CRM? Does it rely on, conducting studies? I'm just curious where you think where the focus should be for some, let's say for some more traditional companies that are trying to accelerate, because you've had quite a career across CPG, yes, but being, a brand innovator yourself and trying to see that change. So curious to what you've seen that's worked really well, for some companies that you've either worked at or for some other players in those space that you've seen.
I sincerely believe that an evergreen focus for every company, whether digital transformation or not, needs to be the consumer. Truly, deeply understanding the consumer, their feelings, their behavior, what's driving that, and how do we as marketers go about being there in all of those moments that matter. I really do believe that needs to be the fundamental focus. And then based on that, we figure out what that digital transformation strategy is and what's the media touch point line, what's the content strategy, so on and so forth. I truly believe that consumer behavior is changing so rapidly these days that we need to be at the pulse of where are they buying? Where are they even deciding to buy? What is the buying process? It's anything but linear. The funnel has been blown up long time back. And based on that, the digital marketing mediums changing so rapidly, the growth of social commerce and live streaming and user-generated content, how do we use that to reach that moment that matters the most? So I think when it comes to focus areas, my advice is focus on the consumer and really understanding them deeply and getting into the pulse of the consumer, because everything else flows from that.
You can never go wrong with a customer-centric approach. Absolutely not. Any other tips too for anyone who might be listening in terms of that D2C element that we mentioned and just seeing a lot of growth there? Any tips, tricks aside from just connecting with the consumer that you might offer some advice?
I think the beauty of D2C is that is the agility that it offers, right? It's an opportunity to get really close to the consumer, to really test and learn before we scale, and take the opportunity to do that. With a lot of companies, I find, we launched D2C, are like, oh, it didn't meet expectations, but why? What did we learn? And it's okay to pivot and keep iterating and optimizing to get it to that point where it's actually a minimum viable product, And I think that's my 2 cents, is that when we get an idea and you think it has some legs, keep working on it and optimizing it. Use that data to actually make meaningful business change, to drive that customer engagement and meaningful KPIs. And I think that's really an opportunity with D2C, the ability to continually test, learn, iterate, and optimize.
Wonderful advice. I feel like someone for me coming with a tech background, that's always how my brain thinks, in terms of agility. But I think, like you said, iteration and optimization, I feel like that's how I live my day to day. And it's great to see, companies that have been a little bit more traditional that are pivoting to this space have to think in that mindset. So listen to Sonia, embrace it. Absolutely.
Thank you, Fabiana.
Lovely. So I think for really my closing question is, where do you see pet parents and digital intersect in the future that excites you most?
I think generally speaking for me, it's this area of social commerce that I think is such an opportunity. And whether it's pet parents or just consumers in general, the whole space of user-generated content, social commerce, live streaming. We started to see more of that with this most recent Prime Day on Amazon. In China, it's a huge growth driver with digital media. And I'm really, really intrigued to see how it comes to life and further grows in the US. As we think about pet parents and pet brands, I in general think that the brands that do a good job at turning consumers into brand advocates are the ones that build most brand love and growth long term. And I think that, with user-generated content of social commerce, there is the opportunity to do just that. And it's an area that I'm very interested to see how that grows. But with the other area that really excites me is just the sheer number of different digital mediums and means we have to reach consumers that were absent, frankly, just a few years back. And I think with pet parents, as you think about this whole process of, getting a new puppy or kitten and helping them live the best life for the longest time possible, there's a need for education, information gathering. There are those how-to moments. Those are those help me now moments. There are those moments of deep love. There are those moments of needing real help with healthcare. And I think with digital media across that pendulum, there is such an opportunity to engage, educate, inform, and make animal health just so much more accessible to pet care and pet parents. So there is incredible opportunity, and I'm really optimistic about the future of our industry and how much growth there is and how much we can do to create a better world for pets. I'm super excited about the future, and in animal health, and digital transformation is just going to make it so much more exciting.
Beautifully said. I couldn't agree more. I think something that you said that really resonates too is we're in this age where we buy into brands more so than ever, but we also buy into those storytellers, and then importantly, those that help us in our times of need. And it's really stressful to be a pet parent put in a situation where your pet's health is in question. And those are the people that you never forget, that you really appreciate, and make you feel supported and your pet supported and loved. And having those interactions with a brand can really change the rest of the course of your life and how you interact with that brand. So
absolutely,
I have my list in my head. I'm sure everyone's going around like nodding in agreement as well. But Sonia, I think you put it incredibly well.
Thank you, Fabiana. It was so great speaking with you, and I really enjoyed this discussion. So thank you for having me.
It was absolutely wonderful. Thank you, and thank you to Brand Innovators as well.
Yeah, thank you, Vito.
Thank you both, Sonia and Fabiana. That was a great chat there. I took away so many great nuggets. It's all about how we're there in all the moments that matter. It's really about, brands that are looking to invest in, or our customers are looking to invest in brands with a purpose. So again, kind of that, I love the fact that you were talking about your business with a beating heart. That's a great coined phrase. And then again, just the whole thing about digital transformation, that you need to, across every touch point, it needs to be digitized. So it's no matter where a customer picks up or drops off from your journey, they need that's the whole digital transformation piece, that's all digitized. So I also just want to, verify that I was one of those that picked up a pet during the pandemic. I had a 12-year-old Yorkie who now has a brother who's just turned 1, who's a Yorkie poo.
Awesome.
And it couldn't have been a better decision, and also very convenient that we were, all home during that to raise that puppy. So great. Love the conversation. Thank you guys, Sonia and Fabiana. Hope to see you again soon. And thanks again for that conversation. And I just wanted, for our purposes, just to basically say that's the end of the day. So thank you for everyone for joining us and tuning in. Big shout out to all our speakers, our sponsors, and our audience. Thank you. Be sure to check out the Brand Innovators website to learn more about upcoming events. And